How are we doing now? I see we have, I think, Bach. Okay, do we have Baker, Arroyo?
I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning. Arroyo?
Here as well. Good morning.
Wonderful, great. Braden? Braden? Campbell? Edwards?
Here.
Is that you, Lydia?
Yeah, I'm on.
Okay, can't hear you. All right, Edwards.
Can
So,
you hear me?
yep, that's a little better for me. I can see you. So Braden, Campbell, and Wu, are you here?
I'm just testing my sound. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I'm here too.
Wonderful. That's much better, Lydia. Yes, thank you so much, Michelle. Kinsey's here. So I think we're just Braden and Campbell. Carrie, how are we doing on the technical side there in terms of connection?
Just on standby for our connection to the website.
Wonderful. You'll let us know, right?
Definitely. Madam President, we're live on the web, ready to start at noon.
Thank you for the update, Carrie. We'll give our colleagues a couple of more minutes since we're shy of 12 o'clock, see if they join us. I think we're still waiting on Braden and Campbell. I think everyone else is here, yes? We'll give them a few minutes.
Yep, that's what it looks like for me. Yep.
Okay, I think Counselor Braden has joined us. And hopefully Counselor Campbell will.
I'm here. Thank you, Madam
Oh,
President.
wonderful. Thank you so much. I think that's all of us then. And if we're good on your end, Carrie, and I think we are, then we should go ahead and get started. Everyone good? Madam Clerk, are you all set?
I am, Madam
You want to
President.
have their water? Okay. Why don't we go ahead and get started then? Carrie, we're good?
Yep, all set, ready to go.
Excellent. Here we go, you guys. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll to ascertain the presence of a quorum? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Counselor Arroyo.
Present.
Thank you. Counselor Baker.
Here.
Counselor Bach.
Present.
Counselor Braden.
Present.
Counselor Campbell.
Present.
Counselor Edwards.
Present.
Counselor Asabi George.
Present.
Counselor Flaherty.
Here.
Counselor Flynn.
Here.
Counselor Janey.
Present.
Counselor Mejia.
Here.
Counselor O'Malley.
Present.
And Counselor Wu.
Present.
All are in attendance, Madam President.
Thank you so much. I've been informed by the clerk that a quorum is present, and we will begin with our invocation, and then we will go into our Pledge of Allegiance, and I will invite Counselor Edwards up to welcome our clergy. Counselor Edwards, you have the floor. We can't hear you, Counselor Edwards. Thank you.
You can hear me
Yes, now we can.
very well. Thank you very much for this opportunity to introduce Father Claude Scrima. He was born in the North End, and he began to feel the call for vocation of priesthood when he was quite young. He was moved to take the decision at the age of 15, actually, to be a member of the church. He was ordained as a Franciscan priest in 1961 and has been active in several ministries. After his early years of teaching in high school, staffed by the Franciscans, and then over in Andover Seminary, he moved to chaplaincy and parochial ministry. He has also dedicated part of his life helping to establish a provincial office at Andover while becoming an admired, acclaimed retreat minister and preacher of missions. Since 2004, Father Claude has served as a parochial vicar for St. Leonard of Port Maurice Parish, North End, and he started this priesthood over 50 years ago. He's a beloved member.
Thank you so much.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the gift of committed civil servants elected by the people to serve the community for the common good and common order in this city of Boston. We ask you, Lord, to be with the council, to guide them today in their deliberations at this meeting. In these disturbing times of the coronavirus and civil disruption around the United States, guide them with a spirit of wisdom and of prudence. May they also keep in mind that they have been chosen as servants of the citizens of the Commonwealth, aiming always for justice and for fairness. May they work together as brothers and sisters with the common purpose of bringing happiness and peace to our citizens. Bless them at this meeting. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We'll pledge allegiance to the flag at this moment. Father, I hope you will join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
and to the
and
republic
Republic for which
for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty.
liberty
and
and
justice
justice for all.
for all. Thank you very much. We will now move on to the first order of business, which is the approval of our minutes. If there are no corrections to be made, the minutes of the last meeting will stand as approved. Seeing and hearing no objections, the minutes are so approved. Now we'll move on to communications from His Honor the Mayor. Madam Clerk, could you please read docket 0796 through 0801? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. Docket 0796, message and order for annual appropriation and tax order for the FY 2021, filed in the office of the city clerk on June 15, 2020. Docket number 0797, message and order for an annual appropriation for the school department for FY 2021, filed in the office of the clerk on June 15, 2020. Docket number 0798, message and order approving an appropriation of $40 million to the other post-employment benefits known as OPEB Liability Trust Fund, established under Section 20 of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 32B, filed in the office of the city clerk on June 15, 2020. Docket number 0799, message and order approving an appropriation of $27,200,000 from the city's capital grant fund in order to provide funding for various transportation and public realm improvements. These projects are aligned with the goals of Go Boston 2030, the city's transportation master plan. The funds will be credited to the capital grant fund from the parking meter fund, filed in the office of the clerk on June 15, 2020. Docket number 0800, message and order approving an appropriation of $7 million from the city's capital grant fund to address the impact of transportation network services on municipal roads, bridges, and other transportation infrastructure, or any other public purpose substantially related to the operation of transportation network services in the city. Such funds will be transferred and credited to the capital grant fund from revenue received from the Commonwealth Transportation Infrastructure Enhancement Trust Fund, filed in the office of the city clerk on June 15, 2020. And docket number 0801, message and order authorizing the city of Boston to accept the use of various goods and personal properties donated by various businesses and individuals for the use of the city to respond to the impacts of coronavirus COVID-19 public health emergency. Goods accepted pursuant to this order may be utilized by the city to support its ability to operate safely or distributed to residents and organizations within the community to support them as they face the consequences of the public health emergency, consistent with the intent of the donors.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. Just so that folks understand process, these are the dockets related to the budget. I will call upon the chair to kind of update us on the process and what the next steps are. Councilors will certainly have the opportunity to weigh in through our budget process. And so our chair will let us know additional opportunities for us to weigh in. At this time, we're going to hear from the chair, and then we will assign this to the committee and we will continue to move forward with our agenda. So with that, Councilor Bach, you have the floor as chair of the Committee on Ways and Means.
Thank you so much, Madam President. Yes, our budget process is continuing with a huge amount of public interest and engagement, which I really appreciate and I think is already making a better city budget. The next steps in the process is what I want to be clear about today. So tomorrow morning, we'll be having a meeting of the Committee on Ways and Means, which will just be a counselor conversation. It'll be live streamed, members of the public can watch, and it's an opportunity for counselors to come and discuss questions, concerns, thoughts about the budget in advance of our formal hearing with the administration. So what I would say for colleagues, as I've said over email, is just that I think of this like our working sessions that we've had earlier in the process, where it's a chance for us to kind of come together, understand what our shared concerns are, and raise some of those questions so that we have a more fruitful conversation going into early next week. Obviously, the dockets are just coming in now, so the soonest that we can do a formal hearing on this is going to be Monday morning first thing. So although I haven't noticed it yet, people can expect that there will be a Monday hearing on these budget dockets to hear from the administration, for counselors to ask their questions, and also an opportunity for ample public testimony. So again, counselors talking tomorrow amongst ourselves, but in public at the committee meeting in the morning, and then the public hearing with the administration and members of the public joining us on Monday. So and then we'll go from there. Obviously, the final Wednesday council meeting of the year is next Wednesday's meeting. So look forward to continuing the process at that time. So Madam President, thanks so much. And we're going to keep this going.
Thank you so much. This is clearly one of the biggest items that is before us during this time, and when we don't take it lightly, and we appreciate additional opportunities to weigh in, and not just for us as counselors, but for the public. So thank you for making space for that to happen. Dockets 0796 through 0801 will be referred to the Committee on Ways and Means. And now we'll move on to docket 0802, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Docket 0802, message and order approving home rule petition to the general court entitled Petition for a Special Law Regarding a Fire Cadet Program for the City of Boston Fire Department.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councillor Edwards. You have the floor. Councillor Edwards, we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I'm going to apologize for technical difficulties that I see is happening, but I will, please just let me know. Last year, the City Council passed a home rule petition to create a fire cadet program. This was part of the conversation started by Councillor Campbell and was continued on and essentially finished by the mayor by producing this, I think, very historic home rule petition. Last year, this body voted for it to go on, and I believe the vote was 12-1 with one of the councillors not voting for it. This is a historic moment and the opportunity to create a program that is similar to the police academy in helping us to diversify and increase the number of recruits coming into the Boston Fire Department. This is required today. We're dealing with the home rule petition because as it was written, it didn't allow for direct amendments or reasonable amendments by the House or by the Senate at the State House. So they sent it back to us, and they have asked, and we've discussed, and the administration supports 2 amendments. One that would require for demographic data on an annual basis explaining what the recruits and what the cadet program looks like, and the other would create a 4-year sunset clause. Well, I believe, and the administration has been told, that these 2 amendments will actually help to make sure that this cadet program becomes a reality. Just to let folks know, the cadet program allows for people to, or would allow for, I believe, up to 33% of the recruits in the cadet program to be treated as on par with those in the civil service, list. Which means that they would be able to pull from each one equally. That is a wonderful way, considering civil service is the only way in which we recruit firefighters now for the Boston Fire Department. I'm happy to answer any questions. I also have the committee report from last year, and I hope and I'm asking that this body suspend and pass this rule today and allow this to happen at the State House, get it back up to them as soon as possible so we can get this done. Thank you.
Thank you. And so you are seeking suspension of the rules and passage of this docket, to be clear? Correct. Chair Edwards, okay. Not seeing any questions on the floor, we will go ahead and call for that vote. So Councillor Edwards seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0802. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? The ayes have it. Docket 0802.
Madam, I'd like to doubt the vote.
Doubt the vote. Madam Clerk, could you please call a roll?
Counselor Arroyo,
Yes.
Counselor Baker,
Yes.
Counselor Bach,
Yes.
I'm sorry, and I haven't repeated it. Counselor Arroyo was yes, Counselor Baker was yes, Counselor Bach was yes. Counselor Braden,
Yes.
Counselor Braden, yes. Counselor Campbell,
Yes.
Counselor Campbell, yes. Counselor Edwards,
Yes.
Counselor
Yes.
Edwards, yes. Counselor Sabi George,
Yes.
Counselor Sabi George, yes. Counselor Flaherty,
Yes.
Counselor Flaherty, yes. Counselor Flynn, Counselor Flynn.
He
Counselor
was,
Flynn has to mute himself.
yeah, he was
Yes.
here. Maybe we could
Yes,
come back.
That's a yes. No. he
Oh,
said
okay, there he is.
Yep.
Thank you.
Counselor Janey,
Yes.
thank you. Counselor Mejia,
Yes.
Counselor Mejia, yes. And Counselor Janey, yes. Counselor O'Malley,
Yes.
Counselor O'Malley, yes. Counselor Wu,
Yes.
Counselor Wu, yes. Madam President, docket number 0802 has received a unanimous vote.
Wonderful. Docket 0802 has been passed unanimously. Great. Thank you. We will now move on to docket 0803, Madam Clerk.
Docket 0803, the constable bonds for the following have been duly approved by the collector treasurer and were received. Ruth Reyes, Paul Bartlett, Leonard Brown, Christopher Castagna, Gavin Castagna, Rolfin Karzu, Frico Damas, Mark A. Evalogius, Kimberly Freeman Hodge, Colin Harrell, Carl Jean-Louis, Michael Jones, Stephen Jones, Anthony Keller, Earlene Lee, Daniel Long, Berdina Malden, Burton Melkowski, Paul Morelli, Jonas Morose, Matthew Morrison, Sleems Petit Maitre, Fillmore Phillips, William Roach, Rosaline Torres, Wellesley Williams, and Stephen M. Wilson Jr.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So to my colleagues and to those watching, if you recall, a few weeks back, the council confirmed approving constables. This docket that is on the floor right now are the bonds that go with them. And we usually pass this under the usual terms and conditions. That's how we pass this. It is clear to me that this is not the time for usual terms and conditions. This is not the time for business as usual. And given that these constables are so tied to our criminal justice system and law enforcement, this requires a lot more conversation. So we cannot go back to the usual terms and conditions when we understand that usual terms and conditions are hurting many folks that we're trying to help, particularly now in this moment. And so while it is our usual standard procedure to just move this through, I think this is worthy of some conversation and perhaps some questions that we may all have about this process and what we're doing. And so rather than just to move it forward, because we as a body are part of the system that we are trying to change. And these systemic inequities that many of us raise in our hearings and in our meetings through legislation and through resolutions and hearing orders, all of that is tied to the work that we're doing. And so we can't just continue to pass on, whether it's our budget or whether it's these types of things, without greater scrutiny. And that is what I'm asking for, is just greater scrutiny as we take a moment to pause, have some questions answered. If my colleagues have questions, we'll have the opportunity for that. So rather than moving this forward, I think we do need to take a moment to pause and reflect and to have our questions answered about this. And so rather than moving it through today, We will refer docket 0803 to the Committee of Public Safety and Criminal Justice so that we can have that conversation. Thank you, Madam Clerk. So now we will move on to reports of committees. And I believe we're starting with docket 0100, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Docket 0100, the Committee on Government Operations, to which was referred on January 29th, 2020, docket number 0100. Petition for a special law regarding an act authorizing additional licenses for the sale of alcoholic beverages to be drunk on the premises in Boston. To Mr. Report, recommending the home rule petition ought to pass in a new draft.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councillor Edwards. Councillor Edwards, you have the floor.
First, I'll confirm you can hear me.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam President. It might make sense also to also have the second docket read in, as I believe that would be placed on file. If you would like that.
And you're talking about docket 0281, just to
Correct.
be clear?
Wonderful.
Okay.
Correct.
Madam Clerk, if you would do the honors. Thank you.
Thank you. Docket 0281, the Committee on Government Operations, to which is referred on January 29th, 2020, docket number 0281. Petition for a special law regarding an act authorizing additional licenses for the sale of alcoholic beverages to be drunk on the premises in Boston. To Mr. Report, recommending home rule petition ought to be placed on file.
Great. You can continue now, Councillor Edwards, please.
Just confirming again.
Yes, thank you.
And I'll have to keep doing that. I apologize, Madam President. I will start with the first docket, with docket 0281, sponsored by Councillor Baker. After discussion with the administration, Councillor Baker and the administration combined into docket 0100 and had amendments to that. And so, as due to Councillor Baker's request, I would support putting docket 0281 on file.
Okay, so that's with docket 0281, but currently we're on docket 0. So do you want us to handle that? We can do that now, but we were on docket 0100.
Correct. I would like to handle the one that we're moving
So
aside.
you want to move? Sure, fine. So we will take right now, I want to be clear for folks. We are just dealing with docket 0281, okay? You've spoken, certainly will allow Councillor Baker, if you wanted to add a few words there, give you the floor, but I want people here to be clear that that is the only docket that we're talking about. Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Baker, would you like to chime in with a brief remark?
Yes, I'd just like to thank the chair for her work on this. She's really done a lot. And in our conversations, I think we came up with the mayor's legislation was, I think, offered more opportunities for us to get into more neighborhoods and give opportunities to, people that may not get opportunities. So we'll be able to designate some of these licenses as minority license, which I think is a good thing and also being able to go into different neighborhoods. I know there was some concern around the downtown licenses, which I share, and I support the district councils that are in those districts. I just think that all in all, I just wanted to highlight the work between the mayor's office, council, the chair, and myself. I think we come up with something here. The industry may have be a little bit disjointed on this one, but I think, as I voiced in the hearing, that we as legislators for the city of Boston, just because COVID's going on and there are some issues happening in the business world, that we don't want to be caught flat-footed and not doing everything we can to provide opportunities to people that may not ever have opportunities. So I think this legislation can and will speak to some of that. And I just wanted to make sure that I went on record to tell that the work is definitely noticed, and hopefully it's noticed citywide. So thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilor Baker. Just to clarify, Councilor Flaherty, are you looking to speak to this particular docket
Yes.
or do you want to speak to the earlier docket? I see your blue
Oh,
hand.
Yeah, I'll speak to this one, Madam
Okay,
President.
great. Go ahead. You
So
have
obviously, I just want to thank the chair, obviously, and thank Council Baker. I've spent a lot of time in this space over the last several years working with groups, and obviously led the effort in keeping this focused on what it was initially designed to do, which is to help the food deserts and to solve the inequities around the licensing. The overall issue, the fact that we actually have to go hat in hand up to the legislature is a whole other issue that I think needs to be addressed once and for all, that we can't control our own destiny when it comes to issuing licenses and or helping businesses get started or helping communities that are looking for a specific a food venue in their neighborhood. So that one still continues to defy logic. You had spoken about it a couple of weeks ago. So just want to thank the chair, thank Council Baker, his efforts in instituting discussions around a compromise, I think was pivotal in getting this thing to turn, for the simple reason is that everyone continued to pile on wanting more licenses. And we didn't want to run the risk of sort of what we saw with Uber and taxi medallions, where they're completely devalued, but we needed to address the food deserts. We needed to address the inequities. I think that this is a common sense approach to it. And obviously we'll see as the details roll out. And our hope is that the legislator will take it up and grant us the ability to do what we need to do for our residents, for our communities and constituents, and hopefully the broader conversation down the road is to, hopefully we don't have to continue to do this in the future. So thank you, and look forward to supporting it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Councilor Flaherty. Thank you all, Councilor Flaherty, Baker, and Edwards. At the recommendation of our GovOps chair, Councilor Edwards, docket 0281 will be placed on file. At this time, we're going to go back to docket 0100. And just because we had this little blip here, Madam Clerk, I would ask you to please read it into the record again, and then I will turn it over to you, Councilor Edwards. Madam Clerk, could you please read the docket?
Certainly. Docket 0100, the Committee on Government Operations, to which is referred on January 29, 2020, docket number 0100, petition for a special law regarding an act authorizing additional licenses for the sale of alcoholic beverages to be drunk on premises in Boston. Submits a report recommending the home rule petition ought to pass in a new draft.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. Councilor Edwards, you have the floor. We're happy to confirm your sound.
Hello,
Yes,
all set? Okay.
great. Thank
Thank you
you.
very much to my fellow counselors. Docket 0100 is a petition for a special law, an act authorizing additional licenses for the sale of alcoholic beverages to be drunk on premises. This would establish additional licenses for the sale of alcohol beverages in the city of Boston. And the licenses authorized under this proposals would be non-transferable and would revert back to the city of Boston between the owners. It is initially filed, would authorize the licensing board for the city of Boston to grant 184 non-transferable liquor licenses for the sale of alcoholic beverages. Initially, it also created umbrella licenses. At the hearing, the committee heard testimony from John Barrows, Chief of Economic Development, and Kathleen Joyce, Chairwoman of the Boston Licensing Board. Chairwoman Joyce described the role of the board and its process for granting liquor licenses, and Chief Barrows explained that the current liquor license quota is not sufficient for all neighborhoods. Chief Barrows explained that the docket will provide a balanced approach to assist new businesses while providing equity to neighborhoods that lack liquor licenses. The committee discussed concerns with the amount and the umbrella license and the impact on new licenses on the current restaurants who are very much struggling. And I do believe everyone in this body has acknowledged that struggle of restaurants. The committee discussed the need to identify, look at food deserts and to assist underserved neighborhoods. We subsequently had a working session and we reviewed the new draft, if you will, the compromise draft between Councilor Baker and the administration. The amended proposal consisted of 183 total liquor licenses to be phased in over 3 years throughout the neighborhoods as follows. 5 citywide, that would be 3 all alcohol and 2 malt wine licenses a year, with no more than 3 a year available to the neighborhoods of Back Bay, Beacon Hill, and the North End. 5 citywide licenses, the same ratio as I stated, 3 all alcohol to 2 malt and wine a year for businesses certified as minority businesses enterprises by the city of Boston, a total of 15. 5 licenses, 3 all alcohol and 2 malt and wine a year, 15 per neighborhood over the 3 years for each of the following neighborhoods: Dorchester, East Boston, Hyde Park, Jamaica Plain, Mattapan, Mission Hill, Roslindale, Roxbury, and Charlestown. 5 licenses, 3 all alcohol and 2 malt and wine a year for the Main Streets districts. 1 all alcohol license for the Bruce Bowling Municipal Building in Roxbury. 1 all alcohol license for the Huntington Theater in Fenway, Kenmore. And 1 all alcohol license for the Boston Center for the Arts in the South End. We then subsequently, that was presented at the working session, and based off of conversations with the administration, with my fellow district counselor, Counselor Bach, and with Counselor Baker, the docket was amended and is presented to my colleagues as follows. The 3-to-2 ratio of all alcohol to malt and wine was reversed, or 2 all alcohol and 3 malt and wine. This is based off of the direct request and concerns of many of the restaurateurs who are less concerned about the beer and wine licenses and more concerned about the free all alcohol licenses. I want to be clear about that ratio. The other thing that has changed, and I apologize, I should have moved to have the subsequent, oh, Madam Clerk, I apologize profusely.
That's all right.
I'm so sorry. The
Okay,
other
you
change.
need to have the
that's-
language. Is this the issue with the language? Okay, go ahead.
Yes. And I should have
So-
moved first to have
Okay.
that substitute language.
Why don't you go ahead and
Right.
do that? So I think we have to give folks though an opportunity to see the language. So for folks following along, thank you for your patience. It is not easy doing these meetings remotely when you add all of the challenges doing remote work on top of the technical difficulties that we're having. So Counselor Edwards has substitution language that she wants to introduce. So that's it. We have to get it before the body. Behind the scenes, you should be getting an email in your inboxes. So Madam Clerk, if you would do the honors while people check their email. If there's something for you to read, do you have that subject or a reference for them? Like the first where, or I don't want you to read the whole thing, but I don't know if there's anything that we need to read into the record.
I think it's, in one way, to have the counselor explain the changes, because substantively, it's the same petition, and it's the numbers, and it's almost, I think once people explain it, it will help the public to understand. I know it is sort of unusual to not move for substitution, but I think under these circumstances, because it's rather technical, it might be helpful to hear that, then move if people accept the substitution, if everyone's comfortable with that. And
Chair,
if
I'm going
not,
to start with the chair on that. Chair, does that work for you? Do you want to, how do you want to proceed, Chairwoman Edwards?
I'm happy to finish there's 3 minor changes to explain that to my colleagues, and then for them to see those changes and accept the committee report, which includes those changes and the amended draft. And to my colleagues, that would
And
mean
you should
only
have
that
that in the
starts the debate. That's all that means.
Okay, so why don't you continue to take us through, and in the meantime, folks, you should get the language in your emails. So continue on, Counselor Edwards, please.
Very well, thank you. The amended committee report and draft does the following. As I was stating, it switches the 3-to-2 ratio to 2 all alcohol and 3 malt and wine in direct response to the industry concerns that all 3, can you hear me?
Yes, someone needs to, I've got it. Somebody.
Very well. And then it also allows it returns back to the original language filed by the administration and confirmed by Counselor Baker that makes it amendable at the State House. And finally, based off of conversation with the district city councilor, with the folks, district city councilor, Counselor Bach, Counselor Baker, we reduced the number of 15 licenses for the North End, Back Bay, Beacon Hill to no more than one a year over the next 3 years. So as a result, we're reducing, we felt that the 15 was not necessary for those particular neighborhoods. That's the major reductions or changes in the proposed legislation before this body.
Right. And so just to be clear on what your ask is for the committee report with the amended language, this amended draft to be substituted in, and that is what you would like to have before this body. Okay.
Correct. I first need to move for this
Exactly.
amended language to be before the body.
So now that people have had a chance, so that's the first item that is before us, folks, okay?
So what we would do is, Madam President, you would call the question of moving for substitution. If people accept the substitution to the actual passage in the new draft, but just the substitution language that reverses some of the numbers and areas that they would be issued.
Yeah, we just have to be clear, that is what is before us and what we're being asked to know.
The first thing I'm asking for this body to do is to substitute the report and the draft. And so this body can reject that or not. And I explained what the differences are, and that's it.
Let me take a quick recess.
So, Madam President,
We're on recess.
Madam President, can you hear me?
What happens? I'm gonna go.
No, we're just in recess.
Do we stay here? Yeah? I don't know.
Right. So all
You guys, we're back in session. Is everyone back with us? So we want to be clear, what is being asked, what our chair is putting before us is the substituted language. You guys have that in your inboxes. That is what we are voting on. Before we can even get to accepting the committee report, we've got to put before the substituted language, okay? So that is what we're being asked
Madam
to
Chair,
print.
if I could just interrupt, I'm sorry for the interruption. It appears we may have lost Counselor Mejia. I just want to make sure she's here for the explanation.
Great, I appreciate that, and I will reach out. So I just want to be clear on what that is. Counselor Mejia, are you with us? Okay, I'll reach out while we try to rejoin her. Are people clear? Okay. Do you want to wrap anything else up, Counselor Edwards? So that, and Mejia is back with us, great. So what we are being asked to vote on, what is before the body is the substituted language. Once we approve once we vote on the substituted language, we can then move to the report itself. Okay, great. So with that said, I'm gonna ask for just a voice call that, well, no, we have it before us. Do we need to poll this committee? Madam Clerk? You're on mute. I think you're muted.
Unmute.
Yes, there you go.
Right, I'm very sorry about that. So I'm sorry, and what was your question, Madam President?
We didn't need to poll the committee. We're just gonna go ahead and vote, take the,
Well, no,
so all in favor for the substituted language. We don't need to poll the committee.
No,
All
because
in
it's already
favor?
part of the committee. I
Exactly.
mean, agenda. Mhm.
All in favor? Say aye.
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 Any nays?
I,
The ayes have it. And the substituted language has been approved. Now, I will turn it back to our chair because now what we need to do is approve the committee report. Counselor Edwards, if you have, just to wrap up to some, and then I will certainly take a show of hands because I see some hands popping up. Wonderful. Did you want to sum anything up before I move on to blue hands, Counselor Edwards as the chair? Are you good?
Can you hear me?
It's a little low on your end.
Oh,
That's better.
so in summary, thank you for substituting the report. The report does reflect slight differences, but the overall goal and the overall mission to assure that we have a robust licensing program in the city of Boston is very much the same. After having gone through the different parties and discussed with different counselors and also have heard from the lead sponsor in the State House that he needs something that's amendable to get it done, I'm recommending ultimately that we vote to pass and that this home rule petition move on to the State House.
That is your recommendation. Wonderful. Counselor Flaherty, I see your blue hand raised. You have the floor, Counselor Flaherty.
Just a point of clarification through the chair to the president, to the chair, just on the amendable versus unamendable language, because that was a point of contention in our hearing. So I guess what is the rationale that the legislature needs it to be amendable when we as council legislators have had vetted this fully with our constituents, community leaders, et cetera, and have identified where the needs are, particularly our food deserts and the inequities. My only concern is if it goes up as amendable, they could add a couple hundred and then we're going to completely decimate the industry. So I've got serious concerns about it being amendable versus unamendable, which we explained in detail during the hearing. So I'm just curious to see what was the impetus, I guess, behind them needing it to be amendable so that they can probably add all kinds of licenses across, which kind of defeats the purpose that we've been working on.
I'm going to refer to the chair of the committee. Counselor Edwards, you have the floor. The volume issue.
Hear me?
Mhm. Yep.
First, I want to note Counselor Baker does have a question as well. He can't find the blue hand. So
I'm sorry about that, Counselor Baker. I'll get to you next.
Very well. To answer the direct question, the lead sponsor, and I believe folks at the State House have felt that this conversation has failed because what we have sent up to them is unamendable legislation on a topic that is, to be very frank, is not that simple. And they want to, I believe, have impact and the ability to have a voice in this. I don't believe, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, that we've ever, as a city council, sent something up to the State House and they've given us more than what we've asked for. I think if there's, so I am less worried about the State House giving us more liquor licenses, which is something a lot of people would prefer. I am more concerned about them saying there's nothing we can do with this. We cannot change it. We cannot impact it in any way. And therefore, it's very easy to shoot down this home rule petition. So I am saying, and I think the rationale from the administration as they originally filed it and from the sponsor in the State House, I also believe, and Frank Baker can speak to this, give them something that they can work with so we can get something in the end.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. I do want to turn it over to Councilor Baker. Maybe he could add on to that for you, Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Baker, you have the floor.
Hello, can you?
Yes.
I'm having problems with my speaker also. A couple of points through you to the chair. I would like to know if these licenses as the year ends, will they go back on the shelf to us, like stay on the shelf for the city to use in subsequent years? So in 3 years, if we have 100 licenses left, will they still be there and available to us to use? That's one question. And then, and we can answer that offline if it needs to be, but that's just something I have in my head. So if Dorchester doesn't use their 5 licenses this year, does that mean there'll be 7 available less next year? That's one question. And I have to agree, in speaking to Councilor Flaherty's point about people possibly going in there and piling on, and from conversations that I've had with different people at the State House, they much prefer it amendable, and I don't think that people will amend up. Councilor Flaherty, I happen to agree with Councilor. I think if they amend down, and I guess we can hopefully be involved in those conversations. It'll be in calling the people that represent the downtown neighborhoods. The last thing that if they're doing their job, they're going to make sure that nothing gets amended up. Just an opinion that I wanted to put out there. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Seeing no other discussion, I think we're ready for the vote.
Counselor,
Unless there's someone who can't do their blue hand. Yes, Councilor Edwards.
I wanted to answer
Please.
Councilor Baker's question.
Councilor Edwards, you have the
Yes,
floor.
to both of them. Essentially, the legislation allows up to 15. So if it's not used in a particular year or time, that neighborhood keeps its licenses. That was the goal.
Yeah, so that's very important, especially for places like Mattapan and
Yes.
in different parts of Dorchester, Roxbury. So that's really good. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Seeing no other discussion, Councilor Edwards seeks acceptance of the committee report and passage of the new draft of docket 0100. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay.
Aye.
The ayes have it, and docket 0100 has been passed in the new draft. Okay, no doubt the vote. Great, we're gonna keep going on.
Drink to that, Madam President. I'll drink to
All
that.
right, that's what I was waiting on. That's why there was a little pause. I was waiting to see who was gonna doubt the vote.
Where are you gonna get the drink, though?
So we already, just a reminder, we already dealt with docket 0281. So we will now skip down to docket 0192. Yes, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Madam President. Docket 0192, the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice, which was referred on January 29, 2020, docket number 0192, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $1,794,683.47 in the form of a grant for the FY20 Senator Charles E. Shannon Jr. Community Safety Initiative Grant awarded by the Mass Executive Office of Public Safety and Security to be administered by the Boston Police Department. The grant will fund regional and multidisciplinary approaches to combat gang violence through coordinated prevention and intervention law enforcement, prosecution, and reintegration programs to be administered by the Boston Police Department. Submits a report recommending the order ought to pass.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. The chair recognizes Councilor Campbell, who is the Chair of Public Safety and Criminal Justice. Councilor Campbell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Madam Clerk. And of course, thank you to all of my colleagues who attended the hearing with respect to this docket, which was held on June 4th. It accompanied two other dockets. The other two dockets, which had to do with the brick and also some funding with respect to cameras. There are still some outstanding questions that the brick needed to answer with respect to those dockets. And so those are going to remain in committee until we are able to schedule that hearing with the brick, which I know the administration is working on. Specifically with respect to this particular docket, in the amount of $1,794,683.47. It's the Shannon grant, and sometimes referred to as the Shannon Community Safety Initiative. It's a grant that the city has received for years. This is an annual process, an annual grant. I know that they're in the midst of calls to defund the police department, to push for reforms with respect to our policing, given the context in this country, not just, of course, the murder of George Floyd, but so many others. There are a lot of creative ideas on the table. Specifically with respect to this grant, most of the emails we received didn't have to do with this one. It had to do with the other grants, particularly the one with respect to the brick. This grant actually goes to fund community-based organizations that do work to prevent violence, to interrupt violence, or to work with those who have been criminally involved for a long period of time. Those organizations include, and I will read them because many of us, of course, work with them closely, Teen Empowerment, Mothers for Justice and Equality, the Peace Institute, the Refugee and Immigrant Center, ABCD, Sportsman Tennis, the Chica Project, Becoming a Man, Friends of the Children, the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office, 3 Point Foundation, and so many more organizations as well. There was a question in the hearing with respect to if we could just pass one piece of this docket, the money that goes, for example, to these community-based organizations, and reject the other pieces of the grant that go to the human capital in the department that helps to maintain these. We cannot. If folks want to do that, they have to go to the state. They have to advocate to the Executive Office of Public Safety, which oversees this grant. The power to pull this apart and sever it does not exist. You okay? You're right, Madam President?
Dirt bikes, I'm sorry, you guys. I'm gonna mute
Okay, no
while you
problem.
finish.
No problem. Let us know if you need us to send someone over there. Love you. And so obviously we have to go to EOPS in the state to have a conversation around not only severing a grant like this so that there are more resources for the community-based organizations that are getting at the root causes of violence, but if we also wanted this grant to not live in the police department's grants division or say the health commission, those conversations as well have to be addressed and directed to the state. And they're legitimate conversations to have. But today's docket is specifically on approving the funding that is available to these community-based organizations. Each of you have the breakdown, which was sent via email from the police department as to which organizations in the community will be receiving these funds. And in addition, I just wanted to flag one last thing. In addition, it's important, of course, to always be looking at data, right? We're investing money in community-based organizations. The question is, are they having an impact? And right now, based on some recent data, the Shannon programming has had an impact on youth violence citywide. Since its inception in 2006 to the end of 2019, they've seen a 16% decrease in homicides, a 9% decrease in aggravated assaults, and a 10% decrease in total violent crime, all through an initial investment of investing not only in organizations, but in individuals. And so clearly the goal is to push for more funding for community-based organizations. This grant, as chair of Committee of Public Safety and Criminal Justice, I asked for acceptance of the committee report and passage of this particular docket with respect to the Shannon grant and funding our community-based organizations. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. I think it's quiet on my end. I can unmute. I do see a hand before we go on. Councilor Mejia, are you okay? We just heard from the chair on her committee report.
Yeah, so no, I do have a quick question before we take a vote, and I'm not sure if
Sure, through the chair to the chair of the committee. What is the question?
First, Madam President, permission to speak. And then, yes, I do have a question for the committee chair.
Yes, please. You have the floor, Councilor Mejia.
Yes, thank you. So I do appreciate the restrictions that we have in regards to the way the infrastructure has been built for this particular grant. I'm just wondering what, if any, opportunities we have as a council to be able to be a little bit more involved in kind of the accountability piece. And what role do, if any, do we have to hear from the BPD about what their criteria is, about who's getting these dollars? I'm just curious about the additional change that's left over. I still believe that there's some accountability that needs to be discussed there. So, I'm struggling with this because I know a lot of the nonprofit organizations that were named that are doing amazing work. I'm just really curious about the process and what, if any, opportunities exist for us to really kind of re-examine this.
Thank you so much, Councilor Mejia. Those are really important questions that have come up for a number of us, as well as many who attend our hearings. And I'm going to turn it back to the chair for a brief remark before
I'll
we
be very
go ahead
brief.
and take the vote. Councilor Campbell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Councilor Mejia. So yes, obviously these organizations that have been picked went through a robust selection process. Unlike some of the other grants, I have to give kudos to Demond, who is in the police department, who established a process actually separate from all the other grants, where he put together a committee of objective folks, of community-based folks to actually go through a process to determine, and a sort of a point system to determine which organizations should get funding, thereby trying to reduce favoritism or subjectivity in the process. I can't say that's true, though, for every other grant. And so there's definitely work to be done to ensure that there are processes that allow more organizations to apply, more organizations to receive money. And then, of course, a process whereby we as a city hold folks accountable with specific metrics in terms of, if you are reducing violence, for example, in the city of Boston, what does that look like? And there should be a shared understanding of what our expectations are. I held a separate hearing at some point last year, I believe, in Mattapan on this very issue. It's a hearing we're going to refile at some point again. And that's a separate conversation, but we can talk separately around refiling that, because there are still a lot of outstanding questions with respect to process for a lot of our grants, but specifically for Shannon, definitely want to give credit to Demond for the work he's done to establish a process specifically for this, to create accountability, more robust process, and a more objective process to get at more community-based organizations to get funding, and not just the same ones, for example. So there's a lot more to do there, but this specific docket, recommending it pass. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. So seeing and hearing no other blue hands, we will go ahead and move for the vote. Councilor Campbell, who is chair of the committee, seeks acceptance of the committee report and passage of docket 0192. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and docket 0192 has passed. We'll now move on to motions, orders, and resolutions. Madam Clerk, we could begin with docket 0. Yes.
Can I put forward a motion to reconsider on docket 801, which had to do with PPE? I believe it got sent to Ways and Means, but I do believe it's more appropriate to send that to Public Health, and I'd like to suspend and pass it. It's docket 801.
I'll have to come back to that. So
Okay.
I'm going to keep moving in our agenda. I'm not going to take time to go back and look at that right now. If it was part of the package of the resubmittals, it's going to stay in Ways and Means. I'm not sure if it was, but if it was, it's going to stay in Ways and Means.
It wasn't, I'll just say I wouldn't object to the move. It wasn't part of the budget resubmission.
Okay, wonderful. Let me take a closer look at that and come back to you, Councilor Royal, but right now I'll move through some of these motions, orders, and resolutions. We'll get to it before we end. Thank you for that. Okay, great. So now we will begin with the docket. I believe it was 0804.
0804.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. If you could please read that. And I'm mindful that I know some of these dockets, Councilor Braden is on, and I see that she's been popping in and out. Councilor Braden, are you okay with your internet connection?
I had to switch devices. I didn't have any video, but I seem to be.
Okay, but you'll be okay now that we're moving to this part of the agenda?
Yeah.
Excellent. Madam Clerk, you could please read the docket?
Of course. Docket 0804, Councilors Flynn and Bach offer the following resolution in support of Four Season workers and support of the statewide right to recall for hotel workers.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Counselor Flynn. You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, may I suspend Rule 12 and add Councilor Mejia as the third original co-sponsor?
Seeing and hearing no objections, Counselor Mejia is added. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Councilor Bach. Thank you, Councilor Mejia, for working with me on this resolution to support our Four Seasons hotel workers. Last month, the Four Seasons Hotel on Boylston Street announced that it would permanently eliminate 194 employees, offering them little severance for decades of service in many cases. That's outrageous. The Boston hospitality industry is the third largest in the city, employing tens of thousands of local residents. Thanks to years of organizing by Unite Here, Local 26, these hotel jobs provide good pay, benefits, and a path to the middle class for many Black and Brown Boston hotel workers, including immigrants and women. These jobs have allowed many residents to achieve first-generational wealth, buy a home, raise a family, and stay in the city. The Four Seasons use COVID-19 as a reason for laying off its workers. And it's likely that this may be the first shoe to drop, with many more instances like this in the coming months. Now more than ever, we must continue to stand with our working families in pursuit of social and economic justice. We cannot allow billion-dollar companies to exploit COVID-19 as a reason for massive layoffs with little severance for working families. We must stand up for them and support a right to recall to maintain hospitality jobs as a path to the middle class. So the resolution also calls for the council to support the Four Seasons workers in demanding a better severance package, and also calls for statewide right to recall legislation that would allow for workers to be recalled to their jobs within a 2-year period of being laid off. I hope that we can pass this resolution today so we can stand up and support our hotel workers at the Four Seasons. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much, Counselor Flynn. The chair now recognizes Counselor Bach. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. And thank you to Counselor Flynn, our lead sponsor. I'm thrilled to be co-sponsoring this with him and Counselor Mejia. Folks may remember that when I gave my maiden speech back in February, it was on cooperative housing. And there's a co-op in my district, Charles Bank, that I talked about that has enabled a lot of folks in the middle class to stay in the city for many decades. And the reason that I bring that up is because one of the people who lives in Charles Bank, who's lived there for 20 years, has worked for 27 years for the Four Seasons as a server and has made that kind of middle-class wage that allows, in combination with cooperative housing, staying and building a life in the city. And that's really the kind of economy that we have to fight for, right? It's an economy with good jobs and with housing opportunities that keep our people here. And on May 12th, he was summarily laid off with pennies on the dollar on the severance that he's been promised. And the severance he's been promised again over decades, right? And that have been part of, as I've heard from many constituents, a big part of what draws people to the Four Seasons is its exceptional staff and the longevity of the staff, right? And so all of that, and you get laid off in the middle of the pandemic, and suddenly those commitments mean nothing. I don't think that that's a fair and just way for a business to act. And the Four Seasons is an international corporation, but it lands right here in Boston on the edge of our park. And, you know, and as I said, I have constituents who work there and constituents who go there and spend their dollars. And I think everyone has agreed that this is not the kind of move that we can countenance. So I'm really proud. I'm proud of the workers there for standing up, and I'm proud of Unite Here Local 26 and the hotel worker community, which is a community that is coming to their support, even though Four Seasons is not a unionized hotel. And really recognizing that that in many ways, what we need more of in this country is sectional bargaining and an acknowledgement that, it's really that workers' fates rise and sink together. And actually, in many ways in Boston, we benefit from the fact that because Local 26 has pushed for so long with so many of our hotels, we really have a widespread, strong union contract in many of our hotels. But we're seeing here what happens when we don't. I think that, and the right to recall that Councillor Flynn and I are suggesting that the council support today, it's an extension of a provision that is in all of those union hotel contracts across the city, which is that, if there's an economic circumstance like this that causes the hotel to lay off workers, that when they go back to replace workers in those classifications, right? So when you say, oh, now I'm ready to hire back some dishwashers, I'm ready to hire back housekeepers, that you bring back the people in the order, right? That you got rid of them so that you're not, it doesn't become a moment where inadvertently or intentionally, this really diverse workforce with a lot of people who have put in this hard work for a long time gets skewed in the way that you bring them back. And right now that exists in the union hotel contracts around the city for a year. This, given the length that we unfortunately may have to expect the COVID situation to continue, it's much safer for workers to talk about a 2-year right to recall. And that conversation at the State House has already kicked off. And I think it's something really important for the council to support in this moment. So I just really want to point to the fact that there's 2 issues at play here. One is about the specific severance that these workers were promised, and that the hotel is using a sort of emergency provision of their agreement to get out of, that I think is just in bad faith. And then one is this larger question about how we're going to help people get back on their feet in this economy, and how we're really going to keep our commitment to keeping, as I said, a very diverse community of workers able to live and raise their families and build lives here in the city. And so, as somebody with lots of constituents who patronize the Four Seasons or have up until now, and also, as I said, with a constituent I was talking with this week who's one of these 46 workers, I really would like to urge my fellow councilors to support this. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Councillor Bach. The chair recognizes Councillor Mejia. Councillor Mejia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to my office neighbors, Councillor Flynn and Bach, for their advocacy in this space. I have been outspoken about the fact that growing up in Boston, a job literally saved my life. And this is the first time ever where I'm only working one job. So as the first person in my family to buy a house and to get my mom out of Section 8, in order to do so, I had to drain my entire 401k. When it comes to building generational wealth for Black and Brown families in Boston, this issue is personal and professional to me. We all know that the average net worth of Black families in Boston is only $8. And COVID-19 is no excuse for the system to dismantle the wealth that Black and Brown families have built. This resolution is the first of many steps that we need to take to uplift Black and Brown wealth in the city of Boston, and is a commitment to work to fight for the right to recall. Thank you again to Councillor Flynn and Bach, and I look forward to working alongside you with this issue.
Thank you so much. Councillors Flynn, Bach, and Mejia. Well, let me first ask before we move on, if any other folks want to make brief comments or sign on. Are these for comments or sign on? Blue hands for speaking, real hands for sign on. All right. So for Madam Clerk, if you could please add Councillor Arroyo, Councillor Campbell, Councillor O'Malley, Councillor Asabi George, Councillor Braden, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Flaherty, Councillor Wu. Please also add the chair. Councillors Flynn, Bach, and Mejia seek a suspension of the rules and adoption of docket 0804. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and docket 0804 has been adopted. Madam Clerk, we'll move on to docket 0805, please.
Thank you. Docket 0805, Councilors Braden and Campbell offer the following resolution in support of acts relative to saving Black lives and transforming public safety.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councillor, wait a second, I lost my place on the agenda.
Braden.
Yep,
Councilor
Braden. This is docket 0805. The chair recognizes Councillor Braden. You have the floor.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Madam President. I am optimistic yet saddened to present to the Council a resolution in support of acts relative to saving Black lives and transforming public safety, HD 5128 and SD 2968, filed in the legislature by Representative Liz Miranda and Senator Cynthia Crean. I'm optimistic because in the pursuit of protecting lives and dismantling systems of oppression that have existed for hundreds of years, we are and putting in place measures for police accountability. This act put forward by our colleagues at the State House could very well help in that fight. We need to listen and see the thousands of our neighbours and constituents in the streets protesting, calling, emailing, and pleading with us that there needs to be reform and tangible changes in our system. This contradiction between a feeling of optimism and also a recognition of the deep sadness and despair of the systematic abuse and killing of Black people is a very strange emotion to hold in your heart. This resolution asks us to support the proposed legislation of the state legislature, calling from the removal of weapons, not even used in war, and to take them out of the hands of local law enforcement. Tear gas is banned from the battlefield, yet it is used in our streets. The act also prohibits the use of chokeholds, rubber bullets, and attack dogs. The acts also require officers to attempt to de-escalate and exhaust all alternatives before using or increasing force. Perhaps most importantly, the acts create an affirmative duty for any officer present to intervene if they observe another officer using unnecessary force. Perhaps if any of the other three officers had spoken up and intervened, George Floyd may still be alive today. Although I am a white woman, and although I grew up in a military state in Northern Ireland, I do not know what it's like to be a Black person in this country. I can have all the Black family members, friends, staff, neighbors, and colleagues talk to me about their experience, but as a white person, I do not know what that means and what that experience is to be a Black person in the city of Boston. However, I do know that as an advocate, I will work my hardest to fight for the rights of Bostonians, regardless of the color of their skin or however much they are targeted by law enforcement. This resolution is a small piece of working towards that goal. Legislation sponsored by a woman whose name I share, Liz, in the State House, Liz Miranda. She and I are very much different, with different life experiences. My co-sponsor, Councillor Campbell, has different experiences also. I will support them, not as a basic ally, but as an accomplice to bring true strategic and tangible change. I urge my colleagues from all parts of Boston to vote in support of this timely resolution and show the folks on Beacon Hill that the leaders of Boston City Council want change now. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. The chair calls upon Councillor Campbell. Councillor Campbell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. And of course, thank you to Councillor Braden for your leadership, your compassion, your empathy. It's remarkable, frankly. And it's, as I think often say, it's a true honor to work in partnership with you and for you to be on this body. And of course, thank you to our State House colleagues, Representative Liz Miranda, of course, who is doing incredible work and has for a long time, and Senator Cynthia Cream for their leadership on these critical issues. It's critically important that at every level of government, we send a message that we expect our officers to de-escalate and exhaust all alternatives before using or increasing force. And if used, it should immediately be reported by the officers. And an important piece to this is also training. We need to also make sure our officers are trained. We need to define use of force and update our policies to specify regulations around use of force and training for our officers. Transparency and accountability are also key pieces of this legislation, and they are essential in transforming our police department and reducing the use of excessive force. This is especially important with regard to police-involved shootings, which we know are often swept under the rug. And one of the murders that, we obviously say her name, but we don't necessarily, she doesn't necessarily get the same media attention as George Floyd, is Breonna Taylor. This is still a case that was hidden for weeks. And I often think about her mother, who tried to find out what happened to her and where she was, and could not locate her immediately and was not told immediately that she was killed in that incident. I also think about the fact that no one has been arrested and no one has been held accountable with respect to her murder. And not only was it hidden for weeks, once it was in the spotlight, the Louisville Police Department's incident report released had hardly any details in it, even reporting, quote, no injuries. And when pressed, the department blamed this on a technical error in the reporting system. And so while most of these high profile cases have happened elsewhere in the country, we know, of course, Boston and the Commonwealth isn't immune. The very race and biases and prejudices that inform what has happened in other parts of the country exist here as well. So this is an opportunity to work at all levels of government to push for reforms. Really honored to support not only this resolution in partnership with you, Councilor Braden, but also our support our state colleagues who have been doing the work for a long time, and to lend our voice to this particular legislation. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. Would anyone else like to speak to this matter by a show of blue hands? Seeing no blue hands, if you would like to add your name, please indicate with your real hand. Madam Clerk, if you could please add Councilor Edwards, Councilor Bach, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Wu, Councilor Royo, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Mejia, Councilor Sabi George, Councilor Flaherty. Please also add the chair. So Councilors Braden and Campbell seek suspension of the rules and adoption of docket 0805. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. 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 Any opposed, nay? The ayes have it. Docket 0805 has been adopted. We'll now move on to docket 0806, Madam Clerk. Thank you.
You're welcome. Docket 0806, Councilors Braden and Asabi George offer the following resolution in recognition of World Refugee Day on June 20th, 2020.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Braden. Councilor Braden, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you also to Councillor Asabi George for co-sponsoring this resolution. Sorry, my phone is ringing. Get off. June 20th is International Refugee Day, a day to pause and attend to the plight of refugees everywhere in the world, but most particularly at our borders and in our communities. Refugees are a fundamental part of the American story. The Pilgrims who came to the shores of Massachusetts and founded the city of Boston were refugees from religious persecution. In 1847, at the height of the Irish famine, men, women, and children fled hunger, disease, and government indifference to their plight to come to America just to try and survive. Chinese, Vietnamese, Cambodians, Ethiopians, Persians, Iraqis, Chileans, Russians, to name but a few, fled their native lands to seek refuge from political and religious persecution, natural disasters, famine, and wars. Climate change in the global south is contributing to environmental disasters, civil unrest, and wars, forcing even more people to migrate and seek refuge. We have our own history of internal migrations in response to persecution. the great migration of African Americans from the Jim Crow South fled the Jim Crow South for a hope for a better life in the North. Refugees demonstrate incredible courage, determination, and ingenuity to come to America. They have great hope and faith that the United States of America is the home of the free, a land of liberty and justice for all. Let us continue to support and protect the human rights of refugees. Let us work to welcome them to our country and to our city, but also work for peace and international cooperation so that fewer people have to make the heartbreaking decision to flee their native homes and native land to seek refuge in another country just to survive. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Braden. The chair recognizes Councillor Asabi George. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to Councilor Braden for including me on this resolution. You may know the story of my mother, but I'll share just a brief snippet of her experience. My grandmother at the age of 14 was taken from her home in Poland to work in a labor camp in Germany. My grandfather, who was a member of the Polish army, was held as a POW in a war camp. My mother was born in a displaced persons camp in Germany. They came to the States as post-war immigrants when my mother was just a child. As a country, we have seen the many changing attitudes towards refugees in our domestic and international policies throughout our history. This day, particularly during this pandemic, gives us an opportunity to seriously consider the hardships and danger that would lead to people becoming refugees. It gives us an opportunity to remember why we are a sanctuary city and why Boston is strengthened by its immigrant communities, and why we must continue to remove every barrier that makes living here harder than it should be, particularly for our refugees. And during these days and during these times, it's a wonderful opportunity for me to remember how my mom came here and how she came to be and how I eventually came to be, and to appreciate her struggles and to appreciate her reality and the reality especially of her parents during what must have been an incredibly difficult time as young people. My grandmother as a child, again at the age of 14, taken from her home, which is the same age as my triplets, who right now their greatest worry is how many friends can they have over to play in the yard, and to think about the differences in their life's experiences of someone who they had the opportunity to spend time with amazes me and continues to amaze me. So I'm happy to sign on to this. I'm happy to bring attention to this and to celebrate the many different routes that all of our residents here in the city of Boston have come to call this place home. But in particular, on this day that we think and thank and appreciate our refugees in particular, and how special they have made our city and our home. Thank you, Councilor Braden, again for including me. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you both for this important resolution. Seeing no blue hands, we'll move right into sign on. Madam Clerk, if you could please add Councilor Flynn, Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Wu, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Campbell, Councilor Bach, Councilor Edwards, and please add the chair. Thank you so much. Councilors Braden and Asabi George seek suspension of the rules and adoption of docket 0806. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay?
Aye.
The ayes have it, and docket 0806 has been adopted. We'll move on to docket 0807.
Docket 0807, Councilor Flynn offered the following order for a hearing to discuss creation of a frontline workers COVID-19 health registry.
Thank you so much. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, may I add Councilor Flaherty as an original co-sponsor to this hearing order?
Seeing and hearing no objections, Councilor Flaherty is added.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, with the long-term health impacts currently unknown to both health professionals and the general public, a health registry would allow for city public health officials to track the data and monitor long-term effects of COVID-19. as well as providing appropriate resources for those affected by the virus. Our first responders, such as those in the Boston Police, Boston Fire, Boston EMS, as well as our healthcare workers, grocery clerks, custodians, and other essential employees that have bravely risked their health every day on the front line of the COVID-19 pandemic, are most exposed to this virus and, as a result, more likely to experience potential long-term impacts of COVID-19. It is critical that we track the impact the virus has on the health and well-being of our first responders and frontline workers. There are various examples of health registries for different events and disasters, such as the World Trade Center Health Registry, or the Gulf War Registry for veterans who may have experienced long-term health issues related to environmental exposure while in the Persian Gulf. I'm a member of that registry. A health registry can conduct surveys and research on those who are enrolled and would allow public health officials and stakeholders to better understand and assess direct and indirect impacts of the virus and more effectively respond to potential future health complications as well. So I think we owe it to our first responders and frontline workers to provide them with the best resources with the long-term effects of the virus still unknown. A COVID-19 health registry would allow our experts to track this data over the long term and better respond to their future needs. I think this would be very useful, and I hope that we can have a discussion on whether we can create a COVID-19 health registry for our frontline workers. We want to make sure that anyone exposed to COVID-19 in service to our city, in service to the public, gets the needed medical care, and making sure that that is documented as well. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much, Councilor Flynn. The chair now recognizes Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Obviously, want to thank the lead sponsor, Councilor Flynn, for including me. We both have a lot of friends and family that were frontline responders for COVID-19. So I share and echo a lot of the comments that Councilor Flynn stated, and agree that creating a registry that helps us understand and respond and to track the immediate and as well as the long-term impacts of COVID-19 that will enable us to better support our first responders and frontline workers. I know that creating a registry of this type is a huge undertaking. Councilor Flynn alluded to the one that he is on and participates. I know that we've had one for 9/11. I know that particularly as we track the health and welfare of our Boston firefighters, that they're doing it as well. So I think that we at a minimum should have this conversation about how we plan to track the data around people who were our frontline COVID-19 responders. And we need to make sure that they were there for us. And I think we need to step forward and let them know that we will be there for them. So the impacts of COVID-19 will continue to be felt for months, years, possibly longer. This registry clearly will be one of the many ways we can demonstrate that we are grateful for their hard work and dedication during this extraordinarily difficult time for our city. And let's hope to God that it doesn't happen again or doesn't come back again in the fall. So with that, look forward to that conversation and encourage my colleagues to sign on as well. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much, Councilor Flaherty. The chair recognizes Councilor O'Malley. Councilor O'Malley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I just rise to commend the two makers for their work. Ask obviously that my name be added. Obviously what gets measured gets managed. This is a really important step. Looking particularly for our first responders and our police, fire, EMS, as well as our public health professionals, our clerical works, none of whom, or a few of whom were able to socially distance and work from home. I know we've been, obviously this body's been on the record of supporting those who have really been our front lines during the pandemic. And I would simply say that as we begin slowly opening up and we're seeing some other states that have seen some huge spikes, Collecting that data now and continuing to collect the data is going to help us sort of weather the duration of this pandemic and indeed subsequent waves of it. And I would just close in my remarks here. I was going to mention at the end of the meeting, but it seems apropos that there are 50 pop-up testing sites throughout the Commonwealth, and today and tomorrow specifically, they're urging individuals to go and get tested, particularly if you participate in a vigil or other large-scale gathering. I went yesterday to Brookside Health Center in Jamaica Plain. It is as seamless and easy a process, and I encourage everyone to not only go themselves, but obviously spread the word to constituents, family, and friends as well. So thank you, Madam President, and thank you to the makers. Please add my name.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. The chair recognizes Councilor Asabi George. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to Councilor Flynn and Councilor Flaherty for this hearing order. I think it's a great idea. And I think that we should make every effort that we can to track the long-term impacts of COVID-19, especially for our frontline workers. As we reopen, we need to create mechanisms to track the health and well-being of our city. Frontline workers' mental health is a major concern of mine as well, as they have been witness to the great devastation caused by COVID-19. We need to understand the physical and mental health implications of everyone exposed to this virus or who have been at risk at contracting COVID-19. It's why earlier, maybe last month, I called for a helpline for workers as we reopen and asked 311 during some of our budget hearings to look into collecting this information. There are so many COVID-19 related unknowns, and we need to use every avenue possible to get a handle on it so that we know what to do now as this crisis continues and in the future, should we ever face another one like it. Thanks again to the makers for this, and please add my name.
Thank you, Councilor Asabi George. The chair recognizes Councilor Edwards. Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Just confirming you can hear me
Yes.
first. Very well. Thank you. I want to commend the makers, Councilor Flynn and Councilor Flaherty, for your leadership. I think this is incredibly thoughtful, and also it's going to shape how we respond to any other pandemic going forward, honestly, and I think it's wonderful. I do have a question as to how are you defining frontline workers, and also why essential workers or that broader category isn't part of the tracking. I only ask because a lot of our frontline workers, if they're defined as what I think they just are, safety workers, EMS, fire, police, and folks who work in hospital, there are a lot of people who are on the front lines as essential workers, and I think it's worth studying them as well. Some of them are low-wage workers, many of them are immigrants, many of them are people of color who have had to do double shifts in this time. And I think it's really important, especially as we have now the mayor calling, echoing and calling for racism to be a public health crisis, that when we go to study, we don't create mechanisms that could exclude people. But again, I could be incorrect in your definition. So I'm really more asking about frontline workers, the definition, if essential workers could be also studied or be part of this health registry. I've seen as Councilor Asabi George discussed, not only the mental health impact, but the actual abuse. People have been so incredibly rude to essential workers who work in grocery stores, coughing on them as a anger attack, being angry at them for requiring the mask, treating them with such disrespect. And I do believe that it has a reverberating effect on a person emotionally and mentally, and having to deal with that. Plus the other sense of pressure that they're out there at risk just to make, in many cases, a minimum wage. So I defer to either one through Madam President. I defer to either one of the makers, how they're defining frontline workers. Are essential workers allowed to be part of the study as well? And please sign my name. I do support this overall.
Thank you so much. I will quickly go back to the chair before we go ahead and add names. Excuse me, not the chair, the lead sponsor. Councilor Flynn, would you like to respond to Councilor Edwards?
Yes, Madam President. I think Councilor Edwards makes some great points. I think we should make a huge effort to include essential workers. They were on the front lines of this pandemic, and they helped save lives doing difficult jobs, often not making much money, limited health care. So they are as part of our city and the future of our city. So we want to make sure that services are available to them as well. So I will include them, and would love to have Councilor Edwards when we do call for a hearing, I will reach out to Council Edwards to get her ideas as well. So thank you, Council Edwards.
Thank you so much for that clarification, Councillor Flynn. Seeing no other discussion, Councillor Flynn and Councillor Flaherty, this hearing order will be assigned to the Committee on Public Health. Oh, wait, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Sign on.
Sign on, excuse me. My deep apologies to the lead and co-sponsor. You've heard from some of the speakers, their intent to sign on, and by a show of hands, we'll get everyone. Thank you for that. Please, Madam Clerk, add Councillor Arroyo, Councillor O'Malley, Councillor Bach, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Braden, Councillor Mejia, Councillor Campbell, Councillor Wu, and please also add the chair. Docket 0807 will be referred to the Committee on Public Health, and now we'll move on to docket 0808.
Thank you. Docket 0808, Councilor Sabi George offered the following resolution commending Evelyn Reyes for her superior leadership and contributions to the Boston School Committee.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Asabi George. Councilor, you have the floor.
Thank you again, Madam President. I'm so pleased to file this resolution commending the incredible Evelyn Reyes. She has served on the Boston School Committee as the lone student member while being a student at the O'Brien. I'd like to take a moment to announce that Evelyn will be one of the panelists at the BSAC Town Hall on June 25th at 4 p.m. She has a lot to share about her time on the school committee and what it means to be a student voice there. Evelyn is a leader, an advocate, an activist, and a truly kind person who is unafraid to voice her opinion and speak out for a more just school system and city. She has officially stepped down after serving on the committee for 2 years. Evelyn will be attending Columbia University in the fall. Evelyn, I know you're watching at home, so on behalf of the whole City Council, we thank you for your service and commitment to our city. We will miss you and your voice on the committee, but we know you will continue to be a force for good in the world. Congratulations and thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Arroyo. Councilor Arroyo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Councilor Sabi George, for recognizing Ms. Reyes. Ms. Reyes had the honor, privilege of being covered by the Schoolyard News just 2 days ago. And I think it's worth reading out loud her comments because I think it goes to illustrate just the kind of leadership and just vision that we have from folks like Ms. Reyes and also BPS. And so she was asked, like many of us, how she felt about defunding the police. And her answer began with, I'll begin by saying absolutely 100% we need to defund the police and that money needs to go to building up communities. In terms of what schools can do with the money, we can finally put in ethnic studies. We can make classes smaller so that students can get more one-on-one attention from their teachers. We can upgrade our facilities. We can stop using textbooks that have outdated information. We could put in a climate curriculum that the Boston Student Advisory Council, of which Reyes is a member, designed, or any other climate curriculum, because we don't have that. We could expand class opportunities and actually make the city our classroom and send people out to learn things. We could get rid of exam schools with more funding, because when people then would realize and recognize, and I'm not saying that right now other schools aren't as good option, because a lot of schools are good options, but people recognize the exam schools as better options because they have more money. We could get guidance counselors. There's a whole list. Ms. Reyes, I cannot wait to see what you do next, because that is one of the best summaries of the things that we could do for BPS that I've seen or heard from any adult, from any person. And so I just want to say, if you're at home watching this, I'm very proud of you. Your parents should be very proud of you. And please keep using your voice. It's powerful, it matters. And just thank you so much for an excellent summation of the world we want to see and the world we want to live in. And I have no doubt you'll help us get there. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilor Arroyo. Would anyone like to add their name to this resolution? Madam Clerk, if you could please add Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Bach, Councilor Braden, Councilor Campbell, Councilor Wu, Councilor Mejia. Please also add the chair. Councilor Asabi George seeks suspension of the rules and adoption of docket 0808. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. The ayes have it, and docket 0808 has been adopted. We'll now move on to the next docket, Madam Clerk.
Docket 0809, Counselor Campbell offered the following resolution in support of House Bill 2146. Resolve providing for a special commission on peace officer standards and training to study and make recommendations concerning the implementation of a peace officers standards and training known as POST system.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The chair recognizes Counselor Campbell. Counselor Campbell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. And I put this forward as Chair of the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice, but just want to, of course, acknowledge that all of my electeds of color on this body have stood with our state counterparts, whether in a press conference or in other conversations, to support this legislation. So all of your names are on here as co-sponsors. So I just wanted to flag that piece because that has been public. That has also been in many meetings we've had as electeds of color. This resolution is simple. It is designed to, it is to support current legislation by Representative Russell Holmes as well as David Vieira for their extended leadership. And not just after George Floyd, but for years, they have been pushing for a system that says we not only should hold officers accountable for wrongdoing, we should have a system in place that says you are decertified if you do not follow the rules and if you do something terribly wrong. And so right now, while we were having this meeting, got word that Governor Baker also has seen the value in this legislation and has supported it, has put forth legislation to say not only should we create a certification process for our police officers that must be renewed every 3 years, we should create a database for certified officers. Of course, we should do de-escalation training, and we should have a process for decertifying police who use chokeholds or fail to intervene if they witness another officer violating standards. So kudos to the governor and his team for us not only supporting this important legislation, but also for pushing to have this sort of bit done in a timely manner. So I did want to flag that. Of course, other state electeds, including our state senators, including Senator Sonia Chang Diaz, is also extremely supportive of this. This is an opportunity for all of us as a body to go on record to support this important legislation. For every other profession, and many of us are lawyers on this body, for example, we go through a process where we have to get certified in some way to practice our profession. And if we do something terribly wrong, there is then a process to disbar us, for example, or to take away our license. We do not see this in the context of policing. So for years, folks who have been following these police brutality cases or other cases where officers have performed reckless or just egregious towards civilians or towards other officers, there have yet to be a way in which to say you should no longer be a police officer. This system would establish specific criteria to allow for that certification, just like we do for other professions. And so I ask everyone to consider signing on to this. Of course, invite other colleagues to speak to this particular piece of legislation, but it's our opportunity just in a formal way to add our voice to the advocacy of our state colleagues. And a special shout out to Representative Russell Holmes. We share a district. He lives in Mattapan with me. He has been working on this for a long time. I remember when I joined the council in my very first week, not even year, first week as chair of public safety, I spoke to him as well as some of the advocates from across the country with respect to POST. Those conversations didn't really go anywhere. And of course, it's sad they're moving now in the face of such tragedy. So I do want to acknowledge his incredible work and leadership with respect to this piece of legislation, which is critical to the reforming policing system conversation. Thank you, and thank you, Madam President, and looking for a suspension of the rules and passage of this resolution.
Adoption.
Thank you so much. I'm going to first allow for discussion and then sign on. Councillor O'Malley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Just very, very briefly wanted to commend the maker, my dear colleague and friend, the chair of the Council's Committee on Public Safety, asked that my name be added. Also wanted to acknowledge State Representative Russell Holmes for his leadership on this. We share a tiny bit of our district as well, in parts of Jamaica Plain, but this is something that's important. It's exciting to see the momentum at the state level for this. And I just wanted to sort of uplift the voices, you know, where as we sort of think about policies, as we think about the concrete important actions to take, something as important and profound as this, having standards, having trainings, I think that this will actually help not only build confidence and builds better trust, but also builds better police departments around the Commonwealth. This is something that's obviously statewide, and it's important to look at this approach statewide. You know, I will say I've had a number of conversations with all of my constituents over the last couple of weeks, as we all have, and to a person, every police officer, Boston police officer I've spoken with has talked about the need for something like this as it relates to training and standards. So I think that this is a very, very important step. It's one of the many steps, but I just wanted to uplift that and look forward to supporting this and thank the maker for her leadership as always.
Thank you so much, Councilor O'Malley. The chair recognizes Councilor Wu, who looks like she's in my district. Are you at the Big Head Museum? Yes?
Yes, I am, Madam President.
Excellent. Wonderful. Please.
Looking forward to Juneteenth and thinking about that. So I just want to thank the author of this and add my shout outs to those who have been at this for a very long time. State Representative Russell Holmes for making sure that we have known about this issue and we're basically shovel ready with it because so much work has happened. I also wanted to add a shout out to community activist Jamal Crawford. This has been his issue for a long, long time as well, and making sure that Massachusetts and Boston is having that conversation. Just to note that there are only 6 states in the country that do not have this type of licensing and decertification mechanism for law enforcement. Massachusetts is one. Minnesota was another. So it's something that we are behind in, and glad to stand in support with this body. I'm eager to see some of this finally move again after much advocacy for many years.
Thank you so much. Anyone else seeing no other discussion? Would anyone like to add their name? Madam Clerk, if you could please add Councilor Arroyo, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Wu, Councilor Braden, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Sabi George, Councilor Bach, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Mejia, Councilor Flaherty, and please also add the chair. And I would just chime in my deep appreciation for our colleagues at the state, particularly our Representative Holmes, for his tireless advocacy on this issue for a number of years, as well as activists like Jamal Crawford, who live in District 7. So thank you for that. And it's important that the council continue to work in partnership with our state colleagues. And this is another good example of how we can support some good work. So I want to thank you, Councilor Campbell, as chair of Public Safety and Criminal Justice for bringing this before us. Councilor Campbell seeks suspension of the rules and adoption.
Something might be going on with his, Councilor Baker wants to sign on. I think.
Oh, I don't see Councilor Baker. Is he in here? He'll have to indicate that himself, Campbell. I'm sorry.
I think he just sent a message.
Oh, okay, there you are. Yeah. Thank you so much, Councilor Campbell. Madam Clerk, if you could please add Councilor Baker.
Wonderful, thank you.
All right, so Councilor Campbell seeks suspension of the rules and adoption of docket 0809. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. 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 Any opposed, nay? The ayes have it, and docket 0809 has been adopted. We'll now move on to docket 0810.
Docket 0810, Councilors Arroyo and Braden offer the following order for hearing regarding public safety and better outcomes for young adults by raising the age of juvenile jurisdiction from 18 to 21.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Arroyo. Councilor Arroyo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. And I'd just like to also thank Councilor Braden for her partnership on this issue. It's well known that young adults, all the data, all the science shows that young adults' brains and the way in which they comprehend risk and different issues are different. They're still developing. And we see that reflected in the way in which, if anybody's had somebody who recently came of age and can have a car, we see it in the way that insurance applies their rates. They apply them differently based on age. The young adult brain is still developing. It makes them highly amenable to rehabilitation. This development is influenced positively or negatively by the environment in which they're in. The recidivism rate among teens and young adults incarcerated in Massachusetts as adult correctional facilities is 55%. The data would also further show that when youth are incarcerated, they actually tend to, it's such a destabilizing force that they have higher and longer, so they have higher recidivism and they have longer connections with the prison system. That's compared to a 22% rate for their counterparts in the Department of Youth Services as far as recidivism goes. The Department of Youth Services has successfully reduced its recidivism rate following almost 4 decades of reforms with a focus on providing treatment and ensuring healthy and positive development for young people into adulthood. Shifting 18 to 20-year-olds into the juvenile system, where they must attend school and participate in rehabilitative program, would lower recidivism. And since 2013, when Massachusetts ended the practice of automatically prosecuting 17-year-olds as adults, juvenile crime has declined by 38%, with faster declines in violent and property crime rates than the national average. It's important that the Boston City Council have this conversation regarding the changing of the age, because action is pending on Senate Bill 825 and House Bill 3420, and this matter will directly impact the city of Boston. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilor Arroyo. The chair recognizes Councilor Braden. Councilor Braden, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to Councillor Arroyo for allowing me to partner with you on this important topic. On the journey to pursuing systemic change, we must look at who we punish, how we punish them, and what is our goal with the said punishment. I'm not a criminal justice expert by any means, but as a healthcare professional, I know that the field of brain science is continually evolving and throwing new light on our understanding of youth behavior and development. The brain doesn't fully develop until the age of 25. Yet we incarcerate young adults at the same rate as, and in the same system as older adults. And the outcomes, as you just mentioned, are not good. Advocates have been working around the country to raise the age of juvenile detention. And in 2013, Massachusetts raised the age to 18, and we saw an enormous decrease in justice involving youth. In youth. Our juvenile justice system has the capacity to take on 18 and 19 and 20-year-olds due to this drop. Mind you, I'm not advocating for more system involved youth. I'm advocating for better pathways for rehabilitation. Department of Youth Services continues to prove that they are better equipped at rehabilitation than the adult system, the Department of Justice counterparts, DOJ counterparts. I'm very aware that this is a statewide issue, but like all discussions and all politics, it needs to start at the local level. We need as a council to bring in experts, young people, parents, and system leaders to discuss how viable this proposal is to raise the age. If Boston's going to be a leader in systemic change, proposing changes to the way we treat our young people, especially our young people of color, who are disproportionately involved, is an important step. This is a complex issue that merits further examination as it impacts policy in the field of education, law enforcement, and criminal justice. I ask for my colleagues, my white colleagues in particular, not to debate the merits of this conversation, but to allow it to happen so that we can get a better understanding, we can be better educated about this issue and to move change in a positive direction. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilor Braden. The chair recognizes Councilor Campbell. Councilor Campbell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll be brief. I want to just, of course, thank Councilor Arroyo and Councilor Braden for their leadership on this important issue, not only sort of as councilors, but also, of course, before becoming councilors. I, along with many others, stood in support of the criminal justice reform legislation back in 2017. But one place it did not go far enough is to reduce the age. And Councilor Arroyo summed it up well. There are numerous reports, not only from scientific data, but on the public safety side, that have proven that when our juveniles are in the juvenile system, getting the resources and supports they need based on their brain development, based on what they respond to, crime goes down, everyone is safer, and those young people in particular are more successful in life. The thing that I think doesn't get stressed enough that we understand, particularly electeds of color, is that there are stark racial disparities with respect to how our juveniles are treated in the juvenile system, as well as how young people are treated in the adult system. As a former education attorney who was housed in the youth advocacy development's office, which oversees our juveniles and are the lawyers for our juveniles, it was surprising to me the level of punishment that brown and black juveniles would receive, even though data supported and explicit data said that our black and brown young people are doing far less crime than their white counterparts, but are being punished more. And so there has to be a robust conversation on the racial disparities here as well. Looking forward to the hearing, looking forward to lending my voice. But that piece is critical because folks often want to point to individual responsibility. You do something wrong, you get locked up. If that were true, that should be fair across the board for every demographic in this city and in this Commonwealth. And that's just not the case. So looking forward to this hearing. Thank you guys again for your leadership. Of course, thank you to the advocates who've been pushing for this for decades. I stand in partnership with them as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Campbell. The chair recognize. Yes, we have your name. Thank you. I think you said that in the beginning. Thank you. The chair recognizes Councillor Bach.
Thank you, President Janey. Please also add my name. I just want to commend the makers and say, I think that I was also, before being a counselor, part of advocacy through the Greater Boston Interfaith Organization. And as Councillor Campbell alludes to, this was one of the pieces that we pushed for unsuccessfully in that criminal justice bill. And I think that, you know, with young people, especially of the age range that we're talking about, there's a big shift in how people think about the people in that age range in their life, you know, who are still, you know, who feel like folks who are still spreading their wings and flying and figuring things out and making mistakes, and then how those people get treated when you think about them as folks over there, right? And I think that there's a huge racial dynamic to the way that our state thinks about young people of color in this age demographic. And I think it's part of the reason it's so important for us to have this conversation in the city, because even though this decision is ultimately going to get made at the state level, one of the things that I saw as an advocate when we were having that conversation as a state level was that too many of the folks at that level from other parts of our state are not thinking about it like the 18-year-old who lives in their house, right? Like and I think we as the city, for us, we know these are our young people, and I think we have to help change the conversation. And I'm just so encouraged today by so many of the issues that folks have brought to the fore in resolutions and hearing orders. And I, in respect to the president, haven't spoken on them all, but I think that you know, when it comes to things like use of force, when it comes to the certification, we're dealing with a nest of issues here that some are at our level, the city level, and some are at the state level. And what we have to do is get past the sort of passing the buck and instead being like, no, we all have to work together, because we can't let that fracturing of the system at different government levels be a reason that nothing moves. And so I'm really excited about the work that we can do in this moment, and grateful to my colleagues for the leadership. So thank you, and please add my name.
Thank you so much, Councillor Bach. The chair recognizes Councillor Flynn. Councillor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Council President Janey. Council President Janey, please add my name. I want to say thank you to Councilor Braden for her work on this important issue. I don't know much about it, but I'm looking forward to learning more about the issue and studying it and learning from my colleagues and others as well. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. Anyone else looking to speak? Okay, is that a speak, Michelle? I'm Councilor Wu. Okay, we're going to do no one else saying no other discussion. We will do the sign-ons. And I know you've captured some of them, Madam Clerk, but a show of hands, and I will call out these councilors. Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Bach, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Wu, Councilor Sabi George, Councilor Mejia, Councilor Flaherty. Please also add the chair, really important issue, really grateful to Councilor Arroyo and Councilor Braden for bringing this forth. This is a docket for a hearing order, so it will be assigned to a committee. Docket 0810 will be referred to the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice. And we'll now move on to docket 0811.
Docket 0811, Councilors Arroyo and Campbell offer the following ordinance restricting the use of chemical crowd control agents in kinetic impact projectiles.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Arroyo. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and I'd like to thank Councilor Campbell for her partnership in this work. While chemical crowd control agents and kinetic impact projectiles are thought to be less dangerous to their targets than firearms, in fact, all of them entail significant risks of causing serious bodily harm. And chemicals in crowd control weapons like tear gas and pepper spray are powerful sensory irritants, which cause blurred vision, difficulty swallowing, coughing, rashes, vomiting, dermal pain, respiratory distress, and psychological effects of disorientation and agitation. Exposure, especially prolonged, to a large dose of such chemical irritants can and have caused permanent injuries, including blindness, glaucoma, or death from chemical burns to the throat and lungs, or from respiratory failure. The dangerous and injurious effects of use of such chemical weapons for crowd control has been extensively documented by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Physicians for Human Rights. And the use of such chemical irritants can also have a significant environmental impact, as residue settles upon trees, bushes, grass, sidewalks, and streets, lingering for days before breaking down. Chemical crowd control agents are indiscriminate weapons by design. They are targeted against groups, which makes it difficult to limit the exposure of specific individuals or small groups, increasing the risk of affecting bystanders and individuals other than the intended targets. And the use of such weapons for crowd control poses an increased risk to children, the elderly, and people with certain pre-existing medical conditions, including chronic lung disease and certain eye conditions. The use of these types of chemicals in warfare is specifically prohibited by the Geneva Protocol of 1925, but is not currently prohibited for use by law enforcement agencies on U.S. citizens. Kinetic impact weapons like rubber bullets, beanbag rounds, and plastic bullets are specifically designed to cause trauma and incapacitate individuals, and can cause serious injury or disability if they hit particularly vulnerable areas of the body, such as the head, which is what happened here in Boston in 2004 when Victoria Snellgrove, rest in peace, was tragically killed by a pepper spray bullet. This ordinance would heavily restrict their usage, and to my knowledge, if passed, would be the first such restriction in the state of Massachusetts. It would only allow the deployment of chemical crowd control agents and/or kinetic impact projectiles if an on-scene supervisor at the rank of deputy superintendent or higher specifically authorizes such use in response to specific acts of violence or destruction of property that on-scene supervisor has personally witnessed. Prior to any deployment, this ordinance would require that the supervisor at the rank of deputy superintendent or higher to issue at least 2 separate warnings over a loudspeaker system, at least 2 minutes apart, and then another 2 minutes after the second warning has been issued before either the kinetic impact projectiles and/or chemical crowd control agents could be used. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Campbell. Councilor Campbell, you have the floor.
Yay. Sorry, a few technical difficulties. First of all, thank you, Madam President, and of course, thank you to Councilor Arroyo for the partnership here and moving quickly on this. Obviously, this is the time to push for many police reforms that will make our system more transparent, accountable, racially just, and diverse. And one critical piece, of course, is demilitarizing our police department. We've all heard from numerous residents with respect to tear gas use, rubber bullets being used during peaceful demonstrations, and them being injured with respect by these tools and by our officers. And so this is not a question around taking away tools that will make our officers less safe. We know that there are other tools or other ways that we can get at protecting our officers. And so the ordinance is very thoughtful in that we're putting forth restrictions, but leaving a narrow space in a topic of discussion for those officers that see, or superintendent, I should say, or higher level, that see an actual act of violence going on that is threatening the safety of everybody, to be able to contemplate using this. But we think to start, we should not start with using these tools that are prohibited not only by international law, but also in the context of warfare. Particularly what's been coming up in many conversations with residents is COVID-19 and the effect that COVID-19 or using tear gas can have on folks being more susceptible to getting COVID-19, which is of course the last thing we want. And lastly, I'll just say that this is an opportunity to bring everyone to the table to have a robust conversation about this ordinance. We were attempting to be as creative as possible in crafting it. So thank you, Councilor Arroyo, for that. I won't go into the details, he just did. And it really is about, of course, ensuring our officers are safe, but looking at other ways we can do policing in the city of Boston to ensure that our residents aren't unnecessarily being injured. Looking forward to the hearing, looking forward to working with all of my colleagues on getting this passed. Thank you. And thank you again, Councilor Royal, for the partnership.
Thank you so much, Councilor Campbell. Seeing no discussion, no one looking to discuss, great. Show of hands if people want to sign on to this ordinance. Madam Clerk, if you could please add Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Bach, Councilor Asabi George, Councilor Braden, Councilor Wu, Councilor Mejia, and please also add the chair. Wonderful. This docket is docket 0811, and it will be referred to the Committee on Government Operations. Madam Clerk, could you please read docket 0812?
Yes, docket 0812, Councilor Arroyo offered the following order, requesting certain information under section 17F regarding mayoral board appointees.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilor Arroyo.
Thank you, Madam President. In March, when I called for racism as a public health crisis, an aspect of that was systems and how systems operate. And one of the ways in which systems operate and create racist outcomes is by limiting who is part of the conversation, who is at the table. This is just a way to figure out a comprehensive list of all the City of Boston boards and commissions whose members are appointed by the mayor. And it's a comprehensive breakdown of all current board and commission members that were appointed during the tenure of Marty Walsh by name, gender, race, and ethnicity, so that we can get a better idea of what communities are represented at these tables and what work we can do to better increase representation and also quality of perspective and lens. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So Councilor Royal seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0812. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? The ayes have it, and docket 0812 has been passed. We'll now move on to, go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Docket 0813, Councilor Arroyo offered the following order, requesting certain information under section 17F regarding Boston Police Department lawsuit settlement.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilor Arroyo.
Thank you, Madam President. Data is available for the settlements from 2005 to 2015, when the Boston Globe did an analysis and found that we had spent somewhere around $36 million in these settlements, which was considered incredibly high for in comparison to other cities. From 2015 to the present, that data is not available. And so we're seeking that data just to see whether or not there was a course correction, whether or not we've seen a decrease, both in the number of settlements brought forward to fruition, to a payment, but also in the number of claims. And so this is simply a way to ensure that we're tracking whether or not there's been improvement on that front.
And so I see Councilor Edwards has a hand raised. We don't tend to, for 17Fs, we tend to, just move on. Is there some clarification you need? Yes.
I really don't, I need to know what the request is to move on.
And so great, thank you. Councilor Arroyo, could you please clarify?
Yes, thank you for the question. It's the total number and dollar amounts of Boston Police Department lawsuit settlements from 2015 to the present, and a breakdown of the total number and dollar amounts of Boston Police Department lawsuit settlements by the following categories: wrongful convictions and police misconduct. It's those two things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councilor Arroyo seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0813. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? The ayes have it, and docket 0813 has been passed. At this time, there is one more docket, and because I am the lead on this, I am going to turn the chair over to the vice chair and call upon Councilor O'Malley. Councilor O'Malley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam Clerk, would you please read docket 0814 into the record?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Docket 0814, Councilor Janey offered the following resolution recognizing June 19th as Juneteenth in the city of Boston.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The chair now recognizes the council president. Councilor Janey, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Before I move on, I would like to ask for suspension of the rules to please add Councilors Mejia and Councilors Campbell as original co-sponsors to this resolution.
Hearing no objections, Councilors Mejia and Campbell are hereby added as original co-sponsors to docket number 0814.
Thank you so much. So let me begin by thanking my sisters in service for joining me on this resolution. I'm really proud to offer it. Juneteenth has been a big part of my life growing up, a big celebration. I'm incredibly sad that some of the events have to be modified and changed, particularly the Roxbury Homecoming in Franklin Park, which is always celebrated in June, the weekend of Juneteenth. This was a particularly big deal for my family because this was the time that my father would come and visit, when he was living in DC, visit, coming home, the Roxbury Homecoming. And we'd walk the park together and we'd see all of his old friends from Latin school and Northeastern and BU. And it was just an amazing time. And for any of us who have grown up in the experience of what it means to go to a Black family reunion or a Black cookout, it is this wonderful big celebration. It's like having a million family reunions happening all at once with this recognition that we truly are one family. So I'm sad about those events, but I know that the importance of the day and the spirit of community and protest is still with us. When I think about Juneteenth really being a celebration of Black lives, it's also a celebration, and more important, of Black liberation. So for folks who don't know the history, when slavery was officially ended, there were some folks in Texas who did not get the word until June 19th. And so that is why we celebrate June 19th as being kind of an Independence Day, if you will, in the Black community. And so in Boston, we are very fortunate that we have a very activist community and many community leaders who put on amazing events. And I just want to highlight, because here we are at this critical time in our nation's history. This, I think is probably the biggest thing before all of us, this biggest moment before all of us, and what we do with it as people who are in a position of influence and power in this city. And I think, having this holiday, this celebration happening as we are considering all of this is critically important. And we know that there are lots of states that recognize Juneteenth differently, and we're calling for official recognition here in Boston with this resolution. And so I ask all of my colleagues to not join just in signing on to this resolution, lifting up and celebrating the liberation of Black people, but really signing on to the work that is tied to it so that we can all truly be free. So I'm asking folks to sign on, and I will end my comments there so that we can hear from my sisters in service. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam President. The chair now calls on the at-large counsel from Dorchester. Council Mejia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Thank you, Councilor Campbell, and thank you, Councilor President Janey, for having me as a co-sponsor. The title of this resolution says that we recognize June 19th as Juneteenth, and I think recognize, quote unquote, is the key word there. This isn't just a celebration, especially in times like this. This is a time to be reminded of how far we have come, but also how much work we have to do to become truly free. Are we free when the average net worth of a Black family in Boston is only $8? Are we free when there is a 30-year gap in life expectancy based on the zip code that you live in? Are we free when Black and brown people more than ever are twice as likely to be shot and killed by the police more than their white counterparts? Juneteenth is a time to celebrate, but it's also a call to action. We are closer than ever to achieving big changes to our system and holding the people in power accountable to that of what they deserve. We need to all work together in order to make sure we dismantle the racism in every system of government, from decolonizing our education system to ending the over-policing of public health and safety. Thank you to Councilor President Janey, Councilor Campbell, and thank you to all the people out there making your voices heard and fighting for change. And I am just incredibly grateful to you, Kim, for your ongoing representation of District 7. And no matter, you can't even step a toe into Roxbury without being told that you are in your district. The way you wear Black pride and how hard you fight for our people is deeply appreciated, and I'm glad to be alongside you on this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. The chair now calls on the District 4 Councilor, the Councilor from Mattapan. Councilor Campbell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Alexander. First of all, thank you, Madam President, for your leadership, of course, putting forth the resolution and acknowledging this important and critical point in our history. Thank you, of course, Councilor Mejia as well for the partnership here. I know this is a resolution that is simply acknowledging the importance of Friday's date and what it means to us as women of color, what it means to residents of color, but also what it means to many others in the country. And so, of course, pushing all colleagues to sign on. But, you know, we have talked about, and we will bring this topic back to the council to say it shouldn't just be a resolution, it should be an official holiday in the city of Boston. We are at a moment in this country where we're at a reckoning, right? We are literally talking about the persistent and consistent injustices that communities of color, especially Black residents, have faced. And as a direct result and the end product and the outcomes of a society that started with slavery and this idea that Black people in particular are inferior and less human. And so we are seeing that foundation and the byproducts of all that show up in every system in this city and in this country: policing, criminal justice, health disparities, all the things educational disparities, all the things we're talking about. And I know currently there are folks in the community who are starting to look at why not make this an official holiday in the city of Boston? Not just a day where we can come and talk about the importance, but also a day for other folks, namely folks who don't understand Juneteenth, what it means, but also to use it as an opportunity to continue to educate folks about our ugly history and our ugly past, but more importantly, to also talk about how do we put forth solutions to dismantle these systems that continue to marginalize and oppress residents of color. And so I look forward to that subsequent conversation to really highlight the importance of making this an official citywide holiday. If we can do it for Patriots Day and other historical moments that other people deem important, this one I think is very reasonable to consider for residents of color in particular. And I'll just add on the Roxbury homecoming piece, I got goosebumps, frankly, Madam President, as you were talking. I remember going to the very first one. And at that time, my father was still alive, and everyone knows he was born in Boston in Roxbury in 1933. And he made some terrible choices in life, but always pushed for us to think differently, to pursue our education, to make better choices, and to fulfill our dreams and our potential. But I remember going back on that day with him and other family members. Many folks hadn't seen each other in years. Many folks actually thought he had died or that he was still incarcerated. And so it was a beautiful moment in that space to celebrate everyone's story, to do so without judgment, to stand together in solidarity and in love, and to talk about what do we do for the next generation and the generations to come so that they don't have similar experiences as our parents and our grandparents had growing up in the city of Boston, and particularly in Roxbury. And folks often comment, it was really hard being a Black man or a Black woman growing up in Roxbury back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And so we have an opportunity to shift that. Proud to serve in this body, of course, the most diverse body, and under your leadership. But Roxbury Homecoming is one event. How do we celebrate this event in a way that is citywide and recognized by all of us? and gives us all the opportunity to really take a moment to reflect on what this critical date means. And then to do something about it in terms of dismantling systems that continue to oppress. So thank you, Madam President, of course, inviting all my colleagues to join onto this resolution, but to have the next conversation, which is how do we make this more permanent in the city of Boston? Thank you, Councilors Mejia, and thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Campbell. The chair now recognizes the at-large councilor from South Boston, Councilor Flaherty. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Please add my name as the lead sponsor indicated. It's a great event. Obviously, you get to see the families, the generation of families, and I've never missed one, obviously weather permitting. So sad that sort of the show won't go on this year, but Juneteenth is a great event to recognize all that has been mentioned. So proud to serve with my colleagues of color on the council, and proud to sign on as a co-sponsor recognizing June 19th as Juneteenth in the city of Boston, which celebrates Black lives, particularly Boston Black lives, and their great contributions to our city, and those friendships, those lasting friendships that I've made here as a member of the council, and continue to make as we continue to move our city forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. Madam Clerk, please add Councilor Flaherty as a co-sponsor. The chair now recognizes the district councilor from Hyde Park, Councilor Arroyo. You have the floor.
Thank you, and I'll keep my comments short. Please add my name. Thank you to the makers. I think it's also important to note that June 19th, 1865 is when we're talking about, even though the Emancipation Proclamation was in 1863. And so the reality is that these issues and delays and receiving the promise of America continue to this day. I'm an advocate for making this both a federal holiday, a local holiday, a state holiday, every kind of holiday. And in that spirit of leading by example, I've given my staff the option of taking that day off. And so, as we move forward, I just think that the advocacy for this day as a day of reflection of where we've been, how we got here, and the work we still have to do is incredibly important. And so thank you again to the makers. Thank you to my brothers and sisters in service who every day work to make differences in folks' lives, specifically Black folks' lives, in the ways in which our systems hold that back. And so thank you to all of you for that.
Thank you, Councilor Arroyo. Madam Clerk, please add Councilor Arroyo as a co-sponsor. The chair now recognizes the district councilor from East Boston, Councilor Edwards. You have the floor.
Confirming you can hear me?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
I just want to echo first my thanks to the makers and their leadership, but also to really amplify that this is not only a celebration on Black history. This is not only a time to remember how Black Americans got their freedom. This is a national day of recognition that we ended actually slavery in the United States after a gruesome civil war. This is a national celebration. We need to embrace it as such. We were not truly free until June 19th of 1865. And that, for me, is the national push for why it should be a national holiday. We had a war. We introduced 3 civil rights amendments into our Constitution. We fundamentally, systemically changed how this United States economy was going to be moving. And that is worth celebrating and recognizing. We've been through it before. We've been through worse before. We had a war about this before. So it is a recognition that we have gotten through the worst and we still move towards justice. I also want to recognize it is to me, it's the beginning of the birth of the nation for many white immigrants who came after 1865 and the civil rights amendments. If you know your history, the 13th was to end slavery. The 14th gave birthright citizenship. That was necessary because of horrible decisions from the Supreme Court that basically said Black people were not citizens of the United States. So they were basically saying, if you're born here, you become a citizen. How many generations of all colors of immigrants became Americans because they were born on this soil? And it was a result of that civil rights amendment in the 1860s, specifically dealing with Black slavery and the liberation of Black Americans here. It is all connected. It is a national moment to celebrate that we moved forward at one point. Do we have problems today? Absolutely. Do we still need to deal with the vestiges of slavery? Absolutely. But I want to take this conversation beyond that. This is a moment for Black liberation and celebration. This is a moment that every person who comes from an immigrant after 1865, this is the day to also celebrate your freedom and welcoming to the United States as well. So please add my name.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Madam Clerk, please add Councillor Edwards as a co-sponsor. The chair now recognizes the at-large council from Dorchester. Councillor Saibi George, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, please add my name, and I had a lot to say, but so much has been said. I wish that there was a procedure to take and approve this resolution today and also have it be a hearing order so that we could move towards officially recognizing Juneteenth Day as a city holiday. I think that's something that we can do. I'm not sure of the procedural requirements to make that happen, but please add my name. Count this certainly as a vigorous support, but also vigorous support for a city holiday. Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you, Councillor. Madam Clerk, please add Councillor Saibi George as a co-sponsor. The chair now recognizes the District Councillor from South Boston. Councillor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. Please add my name, and just wanted to be brief. Add 2 quick points. I share the Boston Common area with Councilor Bach, and we're both proud to see the 54th Regiment right at the foot of the Boston Common. I highlight oftentimes the veterans, African-American veterans that served in the American Revolution or the Civil War, how they fought for our country, how they died for our country, and they came back to the United States and continued not to enjoy the same civil rights as other people. I also had a friend, many of you know him, was Willis Saunders, a member of the Tuskegee Airmen, was also a Boston police superintendent. This Black aviation group during World War II, same thing, fought for our country in World War II and came back again, didn't enjoy the same rights as other people. So I always highlight the sacrifices and contributions of a lot of people that really fought for our country and then came back and didn't enjoy the same rights as other people. So I just wanted to highlight the tremendous contributions and sacrifices that our African-American neighbors have made for our city and our country as well. And I'm proud to have my name added. Thank you, Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Madam Clerk, please add Councillor Flynn as a co-sponsor. The chair now recognizes the at-large councillor from Roslindale. Councillor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President, and please add my name as well. I want to thank the sponsor and this entire council for making sure that we are affirming the need to be loud, be loving, and to continue celebrating homecoming for our African-American community and for so many families in Boston who look forward to this as a statement of our city's role in history, as well as the marking the continued need to lift up our history and the lessons that we need to still learn from it to truly reach liberation for all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Wu. Madam Clerk, please add Councillor Michelle Wu as a co-sponsor. The chair now recognizes the District Council from Beacon Hill. Councillor Bach, you have the floor.
Thank you, Councillor O'Malley. I'll be brief. I just please add my name. As a historian, I think the history that's been shared by my colleagues is so important, and it's not history that enough of our students from all backgrounds know. And I think a lot about how we can push in this historical city where we tell the story of the American Revolution a lot, to the many things that have come after to make those promises of freedom real and real for all Americans. And I think, as we move towards, we celebrated the 250th anniversary of the Boston Massacre this year, a few months ago, when we know Crispus Attucks, one of the folks who was killed in that, was an African-American. And I think that, we're going to be going into a lot of 250 moments around that revolutionary history. And I was so moved to see our Black and Brown colleagues announce their legislative plan last week, coming from the African American History Museum and that Abolition Trail. And so I really want to support this today. I want to support us making it a permanent holiday in Boston and nationally, and as Councilor Reyes said, at every level, but also thinking about how we use that moment to tell this history. Because as we think about sharing our city more equitably in the present moment, a piece of that is sharing our collective, shifting the way that our whole collective imagination works about our history and where we've come from. And the story of emancipation is so totally central to that and continues. So thank you, Mr. Vice President. Please add my name.
Thank you, Councilor. Madam Clerk, please add Councilor Bach as a co-sponsor. Madam Clerk, please also add Councilor Frank Baker as a co-sponsor. And Madam Clerk, please add the chair as a co-sponsor. I would associate myself with everything said. This is an important act we're taking today, and certainly would echo my full support to a full holiday, city holiday, and agreed it should be a federal holiday. So look forward to the makers continuing that work and supporting them in those efforts. Unless the makers had any concluding remarks on docket 0814. I do apologize. I'm so sorry. Councilor Braden, would you like to add your name or speak?
Was one choose one.
I apologize. Please.
Add my name. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Apologies. Madam Clerk, please add the district councilor from Alston Brighton, Councilor Braden, as a co-sponsor. Apologies for that. Any other councilors wishing to speak? Hearing and seeing none. Council President Janey, Councilor Mejia, and Councilor Campbell, on behalf of all councilors, move for the suspension of the rules and adoption of docket 0814. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. The docket is adopted. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I will come back to the dais. And before we move on our agenda to the late files, I want to come back to docket 0801 for reconsideration.
Madam President, would you like me to reread that?
I would appreciate that.
Thank you. Docket 0801, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept use of various goods and personal property donated by various businesses and individuals for the use of the city to respond to the impacts of coronavirus COVID-19 public health emergency. Goods accepted pursuant to this order may either be utilized by the city to support its ability to operate safely, or distributed to residents and organizations within the community to support them as they face the consequences of this public health emergency, consistent with the intent of the donors.
Thank you so much for reading that into the record again. Earlier in our meeting, there was an ask for reconsideration. Hearing that brief discussion in our meeting and hearing from the Chair of Public Health and the Chair of Ways and Means, docket 0801 is now assigned to the Committee on Public Health. So I just want our records to reflect that. Thank you so much. Now we will move on to late files. I believe we have two. Hopefully there's no surprises here. I think they're both personnel orders, okay, for everyone here, so you don't have to worry about going to your email. These are personnel orders. In the absence of objection, they will be added to our agenda. Seeing and hearing no objections, these late file matters have been added to our agenda. Okay, great. These both late file matters are personnel orders, as I said before, and they are offered by Councilor Braden. Madam Clerk, if you could please read the first late file matter.
Certainly. Councilor Kim Janey for Councilor Braden.
Councilor Braden seeks suspension of the rules and passage of this late file matter. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and this late file matter has been passed. Madam Clerk, could you please read the next one?
Thank you. Councilor Kim Janey for Councilor Braden.
Councilor Braden seeks suspension of the rules and passage of this late file matter. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? The ayes have it, and this late file matter has been passed. So now we're moving on. No other late files. We are at the green sheets. If anyone would like to remove a matter from the green sheets, they may do so at this time. My understanding is that there is a matter that is going to be pulled, so I want to be able to refer folks. We got to get it before the floor. We got to make sure it's in your email. Madam Clerk, so is there someone who likes to, I'm going to see what we have here. The chair recognizes Councilor Wu. Councilor Wu, would you like to pull matters from the green sheets?
Yes, Madam President. Could you pull docket number 0759, please?
And we can find that in the green sheets on pages.
Oh dear, I don't have it printed out. I
have it 11 of 21, but you also have an email.
So is it from the committee?
Yep, and so we're gonna need you to read that officially, Madam Clerk, to get it before. This is docket 0759. And it can be found in the green sheets on page 11 of 21, I believe.
Okay.
And our counselors should be receiving an email so that they have the full matter before them. But Madam Clerk, I'm going to turn to you to make sure it's properly before the body by reading the record, and you guys can check your email to also have it before the body. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. In the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation, docket number 0759, sponsored by Councilor Wu. Is this the one?
Yes.
Okay. Resolution urging the MBTA to protect free movement and peaceful assembly with reliable public transit services during public demonstrations. It was filed on June 10th, 2020.
Thank you. And before we call upon you, Councilor Wu, to speak, Madam Clerk, I'm going to ask you just to poll the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. I'm sorry, Madam Clerk.
Okay. I was just sorry. Not to worry. Here we are. So on the committee, planning, oh my gosh. Right here it is. Councilor Wu.
Oh, sorry. Yes, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Councilor Baker.
Yes.
Councilor Arroyo. Councilor Bach.
Yes.
Councilor Braden.
Yes.
And Councilor Edwards.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I can. Madam President, the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation has been polled and is available to be placed before the body.
Wonderful. Now that this item is properly before the body, I will call upon the lead sponsor, Councilor Wu, and the chair of the committee, Councilor Wu.
Thank you, Madam President. So first, I'd like to make a motion to substitute amended language, which is, I believe, in everybody's inboxes, thanks to Christine O'Donnell at this point.
Okay, so everyone, we're going to take a quick pause. Everyone's get this email with the amended language so that we can have that before the floor. And so I'm gonna just check in with the colleagues. Hearing and seeing no objections, we're gonna have this amended language before the body. You have it before you.
Thank you, and I'll just explain quickly the updated version. So first, of course, it includes the third co-sponsor's name, which would, given Rule 12, et cetera. So Councilor Kenzie Bach is on there along with Councilor Mejia and myself. And then after further thoughtful conversations with colleagues, I want to thank Councilor Flaherty for just really digging in and leaning in on the what was at the crux of last week's conversation, and where I think we all wanted to be on the same page, but there was some just not enough time on the floor to have the full discussion about where the disagreement was. We are keeping the last "be it further resolved" clause about delegating command of transit employees and requesting that the MBTA not delegate command to law enforcement, but making a note that we are not intending for that to hamper response to emergency situations or mass casualty events. So just keeping the clause in, but adding that little note as suggested by my friend and colleague, Councilor Michael Flaherty. So I am the co-sponsors and I were happy to accept that amendment and looking forward to seeking passage of this resolution, or sorry, adoption of this resolution today.
Okay, wonderful. Are the co-sponsors, do you guys want to offer a brief remark about the amendment? And I apologize, I believe it was Counselor Bach. I remember you spoke to this, but I think there was a third and I don't remember who it was.
Counselor
Okay, the chair recognizes the co-sponsors. If you'd like to speak, just indicate by letting me know.
I couldn't hear.
Okay, wonderful. I was just giving the co-sponsors a chance to add anything. So what we're going to do is we're going to vote on the amendment and then we will vote on the full amended resolution. Okay? Just so folks that are clear. Everyone has the amendment before them?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So there is an amendment before the body. I'm going to ask if people are in favor of this by indicating by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. And so the amendment has been passed. So now we're looking at the resolution with amended language. I'm going to pause for a minute because I see there is a blue hand. Councillor Flynn, did you have a question or a comment about anything?
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. I had a comment. I want to say thank you to Council Wu for making that change. He also mentioned that in the resolution that the MBTA, I believe, already agreed upon an issue, if she could clarify it, about transporting public safety officials to and from a certain area. I know that is now not part of the resolution. I just wanted to ask Council Wu if that's accurate.
I'm going to call upon Councillor Wu to respond to your comment, Councillor Flynn. Councillor Wu?
Thank you, Madam President and Councillor Flynn. Yes, as you noted, in some ways, I mean, just to emphasize, this whole thing is a resolution. So we are sending up the will of the council. The last whereas that touches on the use of public transit facilities and resources for law enforcement is effectively moot as it comes to the current moment that we are in, because the Fiscal and Management Control Board did take a vote to take the exact stance that this resolution takes, and the MBTA has confirmed that they will honor that. So I see, and again, would defer to co-sponsors to weigh in as well, but I see this more as the will of the council as it comes to all future public demonstrations and events as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. So
Thank you, Councilor Wu. Thank you, Council President Janey. I just wanted to highlight that I think it's very important that we make sure that anyone that is demonstrating is treated fairly, and is safe. But I also want to make sure that our public safety personnel are also safe as well. So I think that addresses it, but that's something I just wanted to highlight. But thank you, Councilor Wu.
I appreciate that in this discussion. So thank you. So now we have before us an amended resolution that we still need to vote on. Okay, if there's no other discussion, we'll bring it right now for a vote. Councilors Wu, Mejia, and Bach seek adoption of docket 0759 in its amended draft. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any nays?
Aye.
Nay.
Okay, the ayes have it. Docket 0759 has been passed.
Doubt the vote.
Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll? Madam Clerk? Would you please call the roll? Vote. I'm sorry, there's a background noise on some folks.
I'm totally missing you. I'm
Yeah.
so sorry. I wasn't sleeping.
No, that's okay. There are a lot of folks unmuted, so I'm just trying to go through and mute.
Right.
This is a roll call vote, people. So if you're on mute, when your name's coming up,
Okay.
it's alphabetical order, so you know when you're next. Please
Great.
get ready to unmute. We're just trying to manage the background noise here. Thank you so much. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
My pleasure. Counselor Arroyo. Counselor Baker.
No.
Counselor Bach.
Yes.
Counselor Bach, yes. Counselor Braden.
Yes.
Counselor Braden, yes. Counselor Campbell.
Yes.
Counselor Campbell, yes. Counselor Edwards. Counselor Asabi George.
Yes.
Counselor Asabi George, yes. Counselor Flaherty.
Yes.
Counselor Flaherty, yes. Counselor Flynn.
Yes.
Counselor Flynn, yes. Counselor Janey.
Yes.
Counselor Janey, yes. Counselor Mejia.
Yes, and I want to make sure that you also heard Lydia.
Yeah,
Counselor
I did. I'm back, I guess.
Okay,
I
good.
did.
And it's
It fixed
yes?
For me. Thank
Good,
you, Counselor.
wonderful. Counselor Edwards, yes. Counselor O'Malley.
Yes.
Counselor O'Malley, yes. And Counselor Wu.
Yes.
Counselor Wu, yes. Counselor Arroyo was yes. Did I hear from Counselor Arroyo? Did anybody else hear? I did not hear him. So, the resolution has passed.
Wonderful, thank you. So this resolution has passed in its amended form. We will now move on to announcements. Show of hands for those. I know Councilor Asabi George would like to make an announcement. Councilor Asabi George, you have the floor. Show of blue hands for other councilors looking to make announcements, please. Thank you. Councilor Asabi George.
Thank you, Madam President. And today, when we close, we'll be closing also in memory of Aubrey Estes. Aubrey, many of us know, if not all of us know, as a staunch advocate for those experiencing homelessness and dealing with substance use disorders. I got to know her over the last 4.5 years or so through my work on the former Committee on Homelessness, Mental Health and Recovery, and her advocacy was tireless, and she was exhausting in the amount of work that she put into her efforts. I want to read a few excerpts from her obituary that was posted in the Boston Globe, just because I think it says it well. Miss Estes, Esther has encouraged those outside her work to look at drug users with more empathy and less judgment, and to treat them with common sense rather than senseless punishment. In all of her efforts, Ms. Esther has kept the focus on those who historically have had no clout in policy discussions at City Hall, at the State House, or nationally. I want to say that she dealt with her own recovery issues and was quoted as surviving, and through recovery began assisting others as a peer-to-peer harm reductionist, keeping with herself all times Narcan, a medication designed to reverse opioid overdoses while they were occurring. She was a member of the Harm Reduction Commission at the state level, which was formed to advise the state legislature. She was also a founder of Safe Injection Massachusetts Now, or SIVMA Now, an organization which advocates for supervised injection sites and facilities here in Massachusetts. When a number of us traveled over the years to visit some different localities that were using or looking to utilize safe injection sites, Aubrey was someone that I connected with to understand who the players were in those other places, who we should be connected with, because she was ever immersed in this work. So although we didn't always agree on the work at hand, Aubrey brought before the council in particular her experience very clearly and very concisely and very forwardly, and certainly informed me on the work that remained and still today in many ways remains undone, especially for those who are experiencing homelessness and dealing with substance use disorders. I look forward to closing this meeting today when we do in her memory. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much, Councilor Asabi George. The chair recognizes Councilor Edwards. Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Furman, you can hear me?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Oh, not anymore.
Can you still hear me?
A little bit.
For heaven's sake.
Better.
Better?
Yep.
Okay. Couple things. One, I wanted to acknowledge that Captain Fong, who is an amazing police officer for 33 years, is retiring this Friday. and he will be deeply missed by many, not just my district. He is the captain for A1, and that is downtown. That is includes the Charlestown and the North End, and he has come to all the community meetings, has been readily available, has been a true guiding light, a officer's officer. He has been my rock in many cases when I need to turn to a captain and to get some just real honest opinion, like what the heck just happened in the district. And he's always picked up his cell phone. There have been times where I have had literally asked, like, what can I say about this? When the woman was captured, for example, or kidnapped or taken off to Charlestown, I turned to Captain Fong. I turned to him before I turned to anybody else. What is going on and what am I supposed to say? And he has always been there like a lighthouse, honestly, in some of the worst situations. And mind you, A1 gets it all the parades, all the things happen in A1. And so he has been there, I don't know. And I told him I disagree and I was going to file a resolution to stop him, but I legally can't do that. So he's going to retire. And I just had to acknowledge that we're going to lose him. Another note, I just want to congratulate the graduate students of Harvard. The student union has entered into a contract with Harvard. I've been supporting them since 2015 in organizing. Counselor Baker actually helped to organize the historic and largest hearing order on graduate student unions. And so I have to thank him. That was, and he basically put it to them and noted the hypocrisy by some of these institutions who talk about social justice and can't pay their workers a decent wage. Bunker Hill Day is today. It's the 245th anniversary, and I had the pleasure of speaking very briefly and laying down the wreath on Bunker Hill at the monument, which is a massive graveyard of men and women, patriots of all colors, who are fighting not just for systemic change, but outright revolution and the birth of a new nation that they never got to see. So I just wanted to acknowledge that today, 2 days before Juneteenth, we're also commemorating that massive battle and what it means to Charlestown to this day, and for the city of Boston. Finally, I need to conclude and take the time to acknowledge the loss of an incredible man. On Tuesday, the city of Boston, the state of Massachusetts, and the United States lost Gerard Doherty. Gerard Doherty. I know, Madam Clerk. It was a surprise to a lot of us. He went peacefully in his sleep. He is a giant to the folks in Charlestown. He was a friend to many of us. He was a gatekeeper of history, lifelong advocate for the town. He served in the Massachusetts House of Representatives from 1957 to 1965 and was chairman of the Massachusetts Democratic Party. He wrote a book called They Were Friends of Mine because he worked so closely with and was a key advisor to the Kennedys, to Senator, to John, Bobby, and Ted. He was actually coordinating and working on the Illinois campaign for Bobby when Bobby was assassinated. He went on to still be a great advisor to Ted, and he even helped run the state of of New York for Jimmy Carter. This man quietly is so unassuming. If you ever met him, into his 90s was working and going to work, I think, until last week. It's that kind of person when they go, it's just, I don't know what to say. I'm choked up. He was a huge benefactor and supporter of Malden Catholic, and quietly paid for the scholarships of many young men and women in Charlestown. And it did it so much. It was understood that he would, if you asked, you would be able to get the resources you needed to make your life. Survived by his wife, the Honorable Regina Quinlan, a retired judge that I actually got to clerk for when I was a baby attorney. So it came as a shock this morning. And I just wanted to acknowledge the loss of a huge giant on Bunker Hill Day, Charlestown's major celebration. I know he's resting in peace. And we still celebrated Bunker Hill, and we're going to continue his legacy in Charlestown.
Thank you so much, Councillor Edwards, for that. The chair recognizes Councillor Mejia. Councillor Mejia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to thank my colleagues who joined us last week for the fireworks town hall. It was well attended. And what I'm hearing and still experiencing here throughout the city is the trauma that the loud noises are making on folks who have lost loved ones to gun violence, veterans, people who have post-traumatic stress disorder, elders. I mean, everybody already knows what the issues are, but I'm really grateful for folks who are really resisting the whole notion of just going through punitive measures and really looking at a community model and a community-centered approach to handle this. So I wanted to just give a shout out to all the folks who participated in the conversation, to James Hills from Drive, the nonprofit organization that has been partnering with us to help raise awareness, and to my district colleagues who I've reached out to in various different spaces, so that we can figure out what we can all do. But what we know is that at the end of the day, this is something that the state also needs to roll up their sleeves and put a little bit of muscle behind this situation. I don't think this is something that is just going to be here on the city level, and it's going to take all of us to address this. And here's one thing I will say, is just because July 4th is across the street and down the corner, do not think that these fireworks are going to go away. This issue has been before normal times when you hear it, and I get a feeling that it's going to go on way before that. So just want us to brace for what that looks like, and looking forward to working in partnership with the district counselors and my colleagues to address this issue, and thank everyone who participated. And I also want to just give a quick shout out to all the young people out here protesting, making their voices heard and fighting for the things that they want. We hear you, we see you, we love you, and we appreciate you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Councilor Flynn.
Thank you. Thank you, Council President Janey. Council President, I just want to say thank you to my colleagues that attended a mass for racial justice and healing on Saturday at Castle Island in South Boston, celebrated by Cardinal Sean, and comments from Reverend Dickerson from the Greater Tabernacle Church. It was a mass for healing. We had a tremendous, it was a beautiful day, but we had a tremendous message of racial justice in trying to treat each other with respect and dignity. I also want to say thank you to my colleague, Councilor Edwards, who did a reading. I want to say thank you to my colleague, Councilor Flaherty, who did a lot of work behind the scenes as well. Again, thanks to all my colleagues that came. And I want to say thank you to my colleagues also from South Boston, Senator Collins, Representative Beal, and Congressman Lynch for their work in making it happen. So thank you, Madam President, for giving me a couple of minutes.
Thank you so much. And I heard it was wonderful. Thank you so much for your leadership in organizing that, Councilor Flynn. And Councilor Flaherty, I mentioned earlier. The chair recognizes Councilor Arroyo. Councilor Arroyo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President and Madam Clerk, I seem to have missed a vote when I stepped out to the bathroom on 0759, and I'd just like to go on record as a yes. If we can amend the record on that, that's docket 0759.
Yes. Thank you. This was the most recent one, Madam Clerk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Arroyo.
Right.
We'll add
The
your
green sheet.
as a yes,
Yeah.
yes, the green sheets.
Thank you, Councilor Wright.
As a yes, an affirmative vote on that. Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilor Braden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll keep it very brief. I just wanted to acknowledge and give a big shout out to the Supreme Court decision this week that ruled that it is illegal to discriminate against gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender people in employment. It's a huge step forward, and it's very heartening to see that it was a majority decision and a significant step in protecting our rights, and much to be celebrated and something to be hopeful about. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilor Braden. It's clear that we have a lot of work to do on a lot of fronts. Thank you for highlighting that. If there are no other announcements, we will move on with our agenda. Okay. Seeing no other announcements, today we will close our meeting with our memorials as we always do. And we will adjourn our meeting for the following individuals. For Councilor Braden, Virginia Toulos and Paula Marie Smith Bletzer. For Councilors Asabi George and Campbell, Aubrey Esters. For Councilor Edwards, Gerard Doherty. The chair moves. We're going to take a moment of silence right now, and then we're going to close the meeting in their honor. Thank you. The chair moves that when the council adjourns today, it does so in the memory of the aforementioned individuals. We are scheduled to meet again on June 24th, as you all know, at 12 noon. We are trying to get back to the building, but I was in City Hall last week and our seats are very close together and we have mics on our desks. We have to do a lot more work to make the chamber safe. One of the things that I want to do is make sure we have that conversation. So next week's meeting will continue to be virtual until we have that conversation with property maintenance and public health so that we can safely get into the building with partitions and everything that we need. So next week we will continue to meet virtually. So June 24th at 12 noon, we will meet remotely for the safety of the general public and everyone involved, including our staff. Viewers can watch the council meeting on YouTube live by visiting boston.gov/city-council-TV. That's boston.gov/city-council-TV. All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed, say nay. The ayes have it, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, guys.
I see you got a gavel, Kim. You think you bad now?
I brought this gavel. I brought this. It's not like box gavel. I don't know what box. This one says president, so this one is the one that's in my office.
You're going down. Okay. Bye.